Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Harmony Community Development District, the regular April meeting. At this time, we'd ask everyone to mute their phones if you have not done so already. That will help us to move through the meeting. At this point, I'll call the meeting to order and do a roll call. Supervisor Leet. Here. Supervisor Castle.
Present.
Supervisor Berube.
Here.
Supervisor Scarborough is not present, and Supervisor Kramer is present. So 4 members are present in person. Can we check the Zoom meeting to see if Mr. Scarborough has checked in?
If so, they haven't made, he hasn't made his presence.
He had a conflict with his daughter's softball game or something. He may be late if it runs per schedule.
I'll say anything if he comes on.
All right, thank you very much. At this point in time, the second item on our agenda is audience comments. So at this time, this is the time for anyone in the audience to provide up to 3 minutes of comments to the board. This is not a back and forth between the board. This is a time for you to present your concerns and observations. And then we can consider them in further business as we move forward or at a later meeting. Deborah, would you like to step
Can
forward?
you
And if you'll stand up and give your name.
No.
You get yourself a chicken. Give your name and address for the record.
Deborah Bear, 6838 Butterfly Drive. I know you guys are doing the tree trimming stuff and it's looking great. I just want to know if you maybe a possibility if the money runs out this time, when you put in your next budget, can you consider doing Butterfly Drive? Because previously that was the last bulk area you were doing and you had to stop for some unforeseeable reason, but you left Butterfly Drive there. And we've been there 12 years. It's only been trimmed 1 time. And we still have trees that really need to be trimmed. So basically, when you get your new budget or when you get the money, when you do your next area that you're finish up this one, can you consider doing Butterfly Drive as part of your next parcel of trees that you do?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your input, Deborah. Any other members of our audience, either here in the room or on Zoom, that would like to make a comment or provide input? Hearing none, we'll close the audience comment section. I do have one thing that before we get started further into the meeting that I would like to bring forward and just mention. It's been brought to my attention that someone out there is impersonating me and identifying themselves as the chair of the Harmony CDD and phone calls to different people. And so that is of concern. I'll be moving forward to gather more information, but if you do get an inquiry from the state attorney's office or FDLE,
Brenda, did the meeting disappear? Can anyone hear me?
I can, but I can't hear anybody else.
Okay, I can't even see the meeting. It looks like it disappeared.
Same here.
Let me clarify my motion.
Okay.
I'll go along with that. I will move to request a proposal from Cervello. We don't really need a motion. No, we don't.
We're just asking.
Never mind. I was gonna put a not to exceed in, but never mind. Go ahead.
So you're gonna provide a proposal to return it back to its original,
Sod and ginger.
whatever.
Yeah, sod and ginger, and then we'll do a separate proposal with all sod.
What have we done in the back corner where there was jasmine or
Put some
something?
hollies in there. Put some hollies in there.
You know where the one-way sign is?
Yeah,
There's jasmine there or something. It doesn't,
it's all mixed in together.
Yeah, it was.
It's grown all since the hollies came out, everything is just,
doesn't look good. The jasmine doesn't, but.
All right,
all right.
the only other item for Cervello, since they're still here, is proposal 6544. And this is a proposal, we have Kogan grass popping up in our open landscape areas. There's one area of about 2,000 square feet between.
You sure
I
don't
call
mean
it
Congo
Congo.
grass? I'm just kidding.
No.
That was in the agenda.
And dog, and there's some over near Dog Trot Trail, a large area coming up there. The Kogan grass is an invasive species, and I think it's class 1, which is pretty serious. It spreads very rapidly once it takes a foothold. We have a lot of these coming up on the edges of our conservation areas, but now they're starting to pop up in the middle of our areas. The proposal would be $7,894.56. A word of caution, their proposal that's written out, they did a very good job on laying out a good treatment plan as far as tilling it up, but the tilling must, if it's going to start this year, must start like yesterday.
Now.
Because the wet weather season, the till, you can't till it if it's gonna be wet.
Well, you gotta spray it too. That's
Right.
You gotta spray it first, and then you want to till it up. That's the only way you're gonna eradicate the whole grass.
The 2
Now-
sprays is gonna take like a month, right?
No,
No?
yeah, it's like 14 days or something like that. You have to spray it 1 week, and then you come back in and spray it again with it.
Right. So,
Are we gonna have time though to till, because we're right on top of the rainy season, starts in end of May, June.
If he gets with me, show me the area, I get my install manager in here, we can get it done. I'll make sure it gets done.
Now, our ecological consultant said to caution you that any equipment used in this area needs to be washed in the area itself. You need to be very careful and essentially, stake it and rope it off so this stuff doesn't get carried around the community. Because even a small piece of the root will cause it to spread like crazy.
It's all over 192 in the
Yes,
medians
you
on the
see it
side of the
everywhere.
road. It is just everywhere.
The change in temperature is just.
if you read the proposal here, it says you're gonna have 3 weeks between the spraying and 3 weeks after the second spray. So that's 6 weeks from first treatment before we get to doing any work.
That's just cautionary. We don't need that long of a time to put it down,
Okay.
especially with temperatures that we're having right now. You get out there and you spray it on it, don't cut it. That way we get a good application of Roundup on it. We don't have to worry about that.
What I'd like to do, now that you answered some of our questions, is to wait and vote on this actually after our ecological consultant will be with us shortly. Is that okay? And then we can let you know.
Absolutely.
Okay. I just want to be sure, it doesn't mean that we can't approve it, can't start with the chemical treatment.
Right.
And then come back and when we roll around to next dry season or a dry period to do the tilling.
Yeah, because we're in the process of doing that right now, just to let you know that another community, much larger community, Victoria Park, they've had the same issue with Brightview didn't do anything about it, so we awarded the contract and we're in the middle of working on that as well.
So you have experience with the code.
Oh, yeah. And it gets in the plant, there's the same thing with plant beds, Palm Bay goes, you know, they experience it over there, you gotta remove everything, you still gotta spray the tiller.
So we're tabling this? for the
We're
proposal
just
for now?
gonna postpone it till later in the meeting,
Okay,
to make a decision after we talk to our ecological consultant to see if 1 week between spring. would be
Okay.
adequate,
okay, thank you.
If that's okay with everybody. Okay, any other business for Cervello?
The addendum.
Oh, yes, the addendum. Thank you for bringing that. The last one is the addendum to the contract for Cervello. This would provide for Cervello's mowing services for the parcels on the front that go across the frontage on either side of our east entrance, and the V1 parcel that comes down the middle and connects into that little stub road that connects to 5 Oaks Drive. The proposal is an extra $280 per month. Is that correct? To keep that mowed. It is still, the frontage pieces are still being mowed, and the B1 piece is in Coreopsis wildflowers right now. I hate to mow it, but so. But it is our responsibility. We do own these parcels, and we do need to make sure that these will be maintained as they are our major frontage. So, do I hear any-
To be clear, these are the areas that we thought were privately owned before and we stopped the mowing on.
That's my understanding, yeah.
That's right. That's the that
Mhm.
back in, I guess, mid-2020, we took out of Cervello's contract.
Yes, okay. To that point, we stopped the irrigation at that time. So we should put the irrigation back on, yes?
That would be, I wish we hadn't have ever turned it on, but off, but evidently it is on.
No, it's off.
It's been kept watered up there.
That area does not have irrigation.
No irrigation whatsoever. Okay, then we will need to get with the property owner and get proper permission to
The wires
access.
from my
I thought it was our property.
The box is not on that strip.
I think we have a new property owner.
Yes, inside the fence and the plant.
No, well, and not that it is shown up on the property appraiser's website yet.
Apparently it's pretty fresh, but anyway.
Okay.
If we're-
It shows, the new ownership shows on the west side of our entry road, east entrance, but not on the west side, so. We can-
Well, if it's growing, the water must not be that much of an issue, right?
It may not, be. It may be fine, and.
Yeah. Well, it's just something to keep in mind. If this is coming back to us,
Right,
it's an easy matter to put the irrigation back.
Yeah.
It's on, right? So,
well, easy.
Well,
or-
the control and everything is on someone else's property.
I know.
Right,
that's-
so we, no, we're not asking anyone to go out.
The actual connection is easy. Gaining the hieroglyphics to get there
So-
without,
Yeah, we will work on that. But do I hear any discussion or a motion on adding this to our?
move to approve the.
Second.
Okay, a motion to approve by Pam,
Proposal, the addendum.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I guess, I mean, I don't know. I'm not so sure what I'm voting on right now.
That's like a blank check.
I was going for a different proposal, but
All
okay.
right. Thank you so much for joining us. And our next item on the agenda is our consent agenda. This includes the
Thanks, guys.
approval of
Hey, guys.
our March 31st, 2022 meeting minutes. Our financial statements for March 2022 and approval of number 264 invoices and check register.
So I have, before I move to approve, there was a correction that I sent. I think I copied you on it.
You did?
It said that one of Infomark staff people was part of ownership of the new property. No, it was that they were part of the group that was wanted to purchase the property,
Yeah,
but I think I think it meant to say that she had talked with those people.
correct.
So with that,
Elizabeth.
right,
Mhm.
with that correction, I move to approve.
So we have a motion to approve. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion to approve in a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. The consent agenda is approved with the minor. And we're not Congo grassing it, we're Coleman grassing.
Did anybody say aye?
Yeah, we,
The proposal,
Oh,
the
was that?
proposal says Congo grass.
Yeah, so
So
that's
she
what-
copied the
Oh.
agenda from the proposal. That's why it was in the agenda listed as
Congo grass.
Congo grass.
Okay,
It's all
I
the same.
changed it on my cheat sheet.
you moved in second. Do we need to vote?
Moved in second, we didn't get a vote.
Okay, I have motion in a second. All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, passes unanimously. All right, staff reports. Can someone let them know?
I did. Just now, I said you have 10 minutes.
Okay,
Because
two.
David's gonna be short.
David's going to talk about garden room first.
No, he's not.
With the microphone?
No, I'll speak loudly. Yes, I'll be short. Since we have 14 topics, I'm only going to give an update on 4 of them. So first one is Garden Road. If you recall from our bid opening last week or last month, we were over the public threshold for public bids, which is $195,000. You asked me to go back to the contractor to see if we reduce the thickness of the recycled concrete aggregate, we can get below the 195. He said he could, but then we went to the county to make sure they're okay with the thinner products. That led into a discussion with the fire departments, in which they told us the weight of the vehicle and whether or not that thinner product would be sufficient. Myself and Greg went back and forth with several geotechnical engineers and other people in the business, and we were not comfortable going 6 inches less than the plan showed to accommodate a 67,000-pound fire truck. So the question on Garden Road is whether or not we want to publicly advertise for a bid, or obviously I know there's discussion on it later in the agenda on whether the Garden Road is going to be tabled, period. But at least want to give you an update from the engineering side of it. Second item is the RV storage area. We have received comments from Osceola County. We are down to 2 comments, and they want an address for the trailer. I guess it's the Infomark trailer, or whatever you want to call the trailer on Garden Road, for 911 emergency services. And we cannot use Garden Road as a street address because it's already taken elsewhere within the county. So if the RV storage and the Garden Road project moves forward after later discussion today, we have to pick a name for Garden Road and assign an address to the trailer so they can add it to their 911 system.
Okay. Just so there's no, what I'd like to do is take a motion and go ahead and pick a name for that road, even though we may have later discussion, so we don't lose it in the mix. I would move that we rename it to Harmony Garden Road
Or Community Garden Road.
or Community. Does anybody have a preference?
Marilyn, you're a
No.
community garden person. Do you have a preference?
It's fine. It always had been 5 Oaks.
Yeah, but it's
Yes.
off of 5 Oaks, so.
I know it's up at 5 Oaks, but that's what they.
Because we have to
they had
name
to
it
do.
as the new road.
Can't be
Do you
anymore.
want Harmony Garden Road or Community Garden Road?
Harmony Garden.
Okay,
Okay, so I made a
Yeah, but
motion. Do I hear a
spec-
second?
second.
I have a motion and a second to rename it Harmony Garden Road. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Back to you.
All right, second to last topic is the C1 CT neighborhood milling and resurfacing project. My senior engineer Greg has gone back and forth with the district council. We have the public advertisement language worked out, and we are ready to advertise 4 bids at the direction of the board tonight. You want to table it or
You
proceed
have 4
forward?
bids, is that what you said?
No.
The
No,
bid
advertise
advertisement.
for bid.
Advertise for bids. And it's important for us to have these numbers for budget. Will we have them back by the budget time?
It'll be tight. because by the time we put in the newspaper, if you want to run for at least 2 weeks, we can get the bids back maybe before the next board meeting.
You already anticipated 550,000, right?
I think was it 550 the latest? It was
Yeah.
660, and I think we did some dieting on
The
that.
last number that I saw was 550.
Yeah, seems right.
Based on what's going on since, should we anticipate a little bit more than that?
Kind of easily be at 20% above that easily. I mean, things are continuing to escalate. So.
So.
Well, I'm just thinking for the budget, right? Because we're gonna get into the budget before we have the bids.
When is the budget workshop?
The budget, the tentative budget is due June 14th.
I can get bids back before then, so you know the real number. That's what the goal is.
Yeah, what we could do is take the highest for budget
For
purposes.
just estimating. purposes.
Correct, and then because they're gonna have until August 30th to cut that down, the overall budget, so it's gonna be better to put the highest in there.
Well, I think we'd be safe if we plug in a number of 660. Because that's 20%, that's what he just suggested, is 20% over where we were, so
Just remember when we set that budget, you can only come down, you can't go
I
up.
understand.
So question, what's the, I mean, I know you don't have a crystal ball. None of us do, but what's the likelihood that in 6 or 10 or 12 months, prices for things may come down? Will they only be going up, is your estimate?
I've received no indication, unless we have a major correction in the market, things are going to continue, are going to go down at all. I still hear supply issues, material issues, labor issues, and
It's like a roller coaster. It's kind of hit and miss. Sometimes, we've been watching lumber prices and they're like this. And if you're lucky enough to hit, but there's no way of gaining it. Right?
Yeah, I was just wondering. if
Yeah, I was
it
hoping.
might not be prudent to wait a little bit.
The problem is, once a number gets up, they rise quickly, but they come down slowly, like gasoline, right?
Yeah.
That's the nature of the beast.
so is the board's direction to go ahead and proceed with advertising for bids?
I think so.
Yeah, I think we missed the boat when we didn't do this a while ago.
A couple years ago.
Absolutely.
I'll move.
Because there's always a giant
Okay,
number.
I have a motion to go forward with advertising. Do I hear a second?
Seconded.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? No opposition? Motion passes.
All right, the busy one for the last 30 days has been the estates. Good news is Osceola County Road and Bridge has completed their cleaning of every pipe within their public right of way. So they're all been taken care of. I've done a follow-up site inspection recently of 4 lots under construction, 2 by Regatta, 2 by Millennia Holding Group. I've issued an email to Millennia, telling them about the significant issues in their lots that need to be fixed. A gentleman named Jamie Rodriguez did respond within that same day, said he would take care of it this week, which is Thursday. I will probably be out there this weekend to see whether or not it's been taken care of. I have to do a follow-up email to Regatta Homes. They didn't respond to my request to fix their
They
silt fence.
just had a death in the family.
Yeah, his wife just died.
But yes, I'll follow up with them in a timely manner. I also coordinated with Vincent, and they did a terrific job doing some locates of new inlets that neither the as-built plans or the old plans had indicated. So Vincent and staff found those new inlets. He also found the bleed down pipe that drains these ponds and removed the tree that was stuck inside the inlet permanently. So all that's been taken care of. I did follow up with Atlantic Pipe Services to make sure they can come back out now. The county has done their work to finish their CCTV inspection and cleaning program for the inlets within the CBD open space. I've also talked to Roads and Bridge, Osceola County, to repair that inlet by 7147 Oak Glen Trail, that if you drive out there, it's sinking in the road. They're going to do a Band-Aid fix and then rip up the road when it's appropriate to do the permanent fix of the pipe so it doesn't continue to impact the roadway out there. And the last issue is I talked to Mr. Gable, who's been pumping his yard as things get wet. And if we do any miscellaneous survey. I told him I would survey the top of his pump to see if he's gonna have to continue doing that for the foreseeable future, or if there could be some things done once all this piping and cleaning is all complete, whether that can cease. So that's it for the updates. There's other tentative projects, but if you want to discuss them at a later dates, and they're there for your questions.
The invasive weed is under David's and Catherine and I believe Mr. Snively's site land maintenance is on as well.
Before we go there, David, did you mention the new drains that were found by Vincent's crew?
Yeah, so we
Yes.
thought there was 12.
Sorry.
And then we found some as-built, we thought there was 13, and he found 2 more today.
Good.
They were not on any of the plans or the as-bills.
Wow.
And they were all buried in dirt, right?
Good job.
Thank you very much.
How did you locate them?
How did you all get them?
It's side of, I don't know if the river is a conservation area, it's not inlet in the states. We walked inside of the trees, so we found it.
Just stumbled across them, basically.
Wow. Amazing.
Any questions for the? Notice it, somewhere else?
Do we need him here for the discussion with Catherine Bowman?
I don't think we need to be.
I mean, I'll be right behind you, and I'll
Sure.
leave it, yeah,
He'll slide over.
You're gonna talk behind my back, huh?
of course.
It's not a problem because
I don't have a microphone on.
all of our folks are on Zoom. So, but I guess I'll go ahead and introduce this. This is the invasive weed proposal we had approved. Contingent upon approval by the South Florida Water Management District, the site works. Proposal, unfortunately, the report came back that we would need to get specific permits to allow that much mechanical equipment into our conservation areas. But I will turn it over at this point, Catherine Bowman, if you're there.
And Catherine, if we can't hear you, so you may be on mute. Do you see her, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I understand they dialed in, there's what are they calling it, 407 or a 321 number, do we know?
There's only 4 up there.
Catherine, yes, Catherine Bowman is the 407 number, ending in 7109.
I was asked to unmute.
And then Mr. Snively.
Always turn
Okay.
your-
Catherine?
always turn your mute off.
So as of right now, everyone dialed in, it's still muted, so, oh, they dropped off, so maybe they were trying to reconnect.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll wait until Catherine reconnects. I understand. It's
Far away.
area where there's not good service.
Set you up. That's like people would just go, hello? Gotcha.
You sent it in text.
I did.
That picked up from my other section.
His wife,
David's wife.
Owen's wife.
Yeah.
She had been terminal for most of the year.
Hi, Mr. Snively, this is Angel Montagna. No, that's okay. I'm gonna put you right here in the conversation. We're waiting on Catherine to log back in and then we should be ready to go. Did she get back on?
Not
Let me
yet.
call her. I can see her.
Technology is a wonderful thing when it works.
You can, well, call her on this one and then conference you.
This is Catherine.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Catherine. This is Angel. Is this easier for you?
Yes,
Okay.
that is much better. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Put me on speaker or something?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
I'm so sorry about that lag time there. field right now. So yes, I don't know what you were saying, but I did look at both proposals initially. I spoke with Stefan at the Water Management District, and I researched the requirements of the permit with regard to what activities are allowed and not allowed in the conservation easement areas. And I think it's pretty clear that we shouldn't have any vehicles in there. And specifically, it says in condition 8, activities prohibited within the conservation areas include, but are not limited to, construction or placing soil or other substances such as trash, removal or destruction of trees, shrubs, or other vegetation, with the exception of exotic nuisance vegetation removal. And then it says that in perpetuity, no class 1 or class 2 invasive non-native as described by the EPPC, which is now the Florida Exotic Plant Council, or the Florida Invasive Species Council, shall have no more than 5% vegetative cover between maintenance activities and nuisance plants. I guess that refers mostly to grapevines that are not appreciated, can be no more than 10%. So it seems to me, having done the monitoring and seeing all of those 10 wetlands now in intimate detail, it seems to me that it would be not a good idea to have any equipment in there other than backpacks, unless someone's walking along the edge or mowing along the edge of the Kogan grass, if that's the process for Kogan grass, or potentially cutting and mulching the Brazilian pepper where they are on the edges. However, inside the wetlands, and I know that it is going to be time consuming, but I just don't see any other way that the areas, the procedure for removing the lygodium, which is to cut it at about chest high and remove that material away from the rest of where it's growing and then spray it on the ground, can be done in a way other than with the backpack and hand implements, or I don't know what kind of tool someone might use, maybe a head trimmer or I don't know, electric saw or something. I'm not really sure what the cutting method would be, but it's not mulching. Mulching is going to throw spores everywhere and drag them around on equipment to parts of the conservation easements that are not infected now. And it just seems like, while it might seem cost effective in the long run, I think it would be very damaging. And what you need is people who can identify not only the invasive exotics, but the desirable native plants that we're trying to keep diverse in the conservation easements. It seems to me, and the backpacking is the only way to do it internally. We saw a number of places like in, let's see, wetlands, area conservation areas 7 and 5, I believe, which have an internal marsh. And most of those areas are in really lovely condition, except here and there, there's a shooting up of one piece of lygodium that you're not going to get and find without someone walking in cautiously looking around for new spreading areas of lygodium and treating it with a backpack spray. And it would be a shame to start losing some of the really nice areas that are not infested to recklessness. And, you know, maybe expediency. I think that it's not something that can be, it's so far out of control in many areas, particularly wetland 4 and some areas of 7 and 8 and 6, that it's really going to take some time and some cautious, intensive effort to get it back under control. I'm hopeful that it can be gotten back under control. And that's really the basis of what I meant to say as far as recommending or not recommending a particular approach to in treating the invasives. And I'm welcome to answer, you're welcome to ask me questions. I've been out there, I've been all over those areas. I've seen what's going on, and it's not good.
Okay, does anybody from the board have any questions of Catherine at this time?
So so to be clear, the language that we heard was that vehicles cannot be used back there. And I think I got this right, with the exception of the removal of exotics. Are we clear on that there's no, never mind the efficacy of doing it this way, but that doesn't allow for the vehicles to be, can I phrase my question right?
Trailblaze,
Yes, I'd
paths?
like to answer that by saying that if there were invasive non-native species within conservation areas that could only be treated with equipment such as Brazilian pepper or coconut grass or non-native primrose willows, maybe you would need to take something inside there and risk running over surrounding vegetation to get those treated. But I don't think that's the problem here. For the most part, I think it's the Lygodium. And if you are doing, I mean, even when you go in there to cut the Lygodium and spray it, the guidelines are that you need to bag up your clothing while you're on site and not dispose of it anywhere. And, make sure that your equipment is not dragging around spores, that it's washed off before you leave the site. So things like that don't make me think that in the case of Lygodium, taking any vehicles inside there, unless it's to, just cautiously drive in with an ATV or something, park where you're not damaging anything, and use your hose reel maybe to spray some big infestations. That seems reasonable to me, as long as you're not driving around on the Lygodium that's sprawling all over the ground. Those spores move around so easily, and the people that are doing the work need to be very cautious with what they're doing with their equipment and with their selves, with their persons and their boots and their whatever they're wearing. That will spread spores around to areas that are not contaminated yet. So I don't think in the case of the Harmony situation with the Lygodium, there's any need to take much vehicles, except just maybe with the tank where you have the big infestations and you're not going to drive on vegetation that is desirable and drive on the Lygodium and spread the spores around. And I think that really goes to an appreciation and a respect for the natural community and knowing what you're not supposed to be damaging, as well as focusing on the things you're trying to get rid of. And I've just seen too many conservation areas really having to go and replant repeatedly, because while they had some cost-effective people who were spraying invasives, they were also overspraying because they didn't know what not to kill. And we've replanted a lot of areas where, that could have been avoided by spending money appropriately early on and really doing an appropriate job of getting rid of the particular invasives that were in question.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions of Catherine?
Nope.
Okay, Catherine. Does the board have any questions of SiteWorks?
Yes, I'd like to hear what they have to say in response to Catherine's, what Catherine just had to offer.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
James.
Yes.
I had some audio issues there hearing her, but I heard most of it, and I understand what she's saying. I think the process that I stated may have gotten a bad rap or a misinterpretation of what we do. However, I do understand what she's saying. That you don't want, there are going to be some, I can't say there's not going to be any quote unquote casualties when you're going through there and making the trails that I had in mind. So yes, that's something that happens, but the idea was to effectively get that 90% coverage, where yes, you can do it with backpacks. It's going to be much, much more labor intensive. That's probably the discrepancy between the two proposals. So obviously ours would change without being able to do that. It's just, you need more manpower to do it. A lot of backpacks, a lot of men, a lot of hours.
Any specific questions, James?
What do you say?
At this point, we also have Mr. Bill Snively on the line. He had proposed using backpack sprayers and essentially walking in and treating by hand to avoid mechanical disruption of the conservation areas. Mr. Snively, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I just wanted to, I hope the board had the opportunity to read the follow-up email I sent out on April 5th that sort of outlined a little better our scope of work and how we would tackle this project. My opinion is if you go in there heavy on the mechanical side in anywhere except for the buffer, that you're going to have more of an issue next year than you possibly have this year, just because of the ground disturbance. We own one of those track machines. We have a forestry mulcher. It's great in its place, but outside of its place, it can do some pretty good ground disturbance. And like you say, the spore dispersion on the lygodium, dragon vines, just the turning of that track machine, knocking holes in the ground, it's just going to give daylight to seed that's already laying there waiting to germinate. And not to mention, the wetland issue of being able to move that machine around and get the areas where it's needed without, you don't just jump up and move over, you have to mulch path to it. And if you're mulching natives out, even though it may not be killing the native itself, it's still going to give more daylight to invasives to fill that void. And I think it's going to give you more long-term issues than it's going to gain. And I think you're opening yourself up to the possibility of having to revegetate with native species by permit, just to keep the water management district appeased. It's a search and rescue type deal. You go in with guys in a lateral line, just like you were looking for a lost kid in that swamp, and you literally cut your way through whatever you have to do to make your little path to. You go to the target plant. If you need to cut it, we cut it with hedge trimmers and treat the lower vines. That way you're not spraying up in the air and causing non-target damage where the chemicals fall in. Plus, in a lot of those vines, they may be 30, 40, 50 feet in the air, and you can't spray there with a backpack sprayer anyway. So you're really having to cut it down, focus your chemical on where it should be. And yes, it is labor intensive, but we've done a lot of this for 20 years, and there's really not another way to do it other than to go in there and spend the time it takes and do it right, or you may open yourself up to a worse problem in years to come.
Okay, thank you so much. Any other questions from the board members of Mr. Snively?
No.
Okay, hearing none, I do want to touch on one other issue. We'll bring this back to the board and discuss it in just a moment. But while I have you all on the line, particularly Catherine, we just heard a proposal to treat the Coven grass that is not adjacent to our conservation areas.
Yes.
Have it showing up in our open field areas. And they are proposing to spray it. The original treatment was to spray it with the glyphosate and then to allow 3 weeks, spray it again, allow 3 weeks, and then till it up. That puts us into the wet season. They mentioned today that they could just go 1 week between sprayings and then till it to catch the end of the dry season. Would that be appropriate treatment, or would you suggest?
I know that tillage is used sometimes, particularly on newer infestations, and I'm open to Bill commenting on this if he has better knowledge and wants to say something different than what I'm saying. I have seen that it's very effective to spray and then cut as low as you can, mow it, and then wait for it to regenerate to 10 or 12 inches height and then spray it again. I understand that some tillage system repeated can be useful, and I don't have any particular personal experience of doing that. But on projects where I have worked, where there has been a coal gun gas problem, we have used simply the cutting and spraying repeatedly, and it takes multiple years, and it takes repeat spraying, and it particularly takes someone being there to check it at the right time and make sure that the follow-up treatments are done at a time that will be useful. Not cutting it when there are seed heads around, and not using equipment in the tillage unless you are washing it right there when you're done, so that you're not taking those propagules, little pieces of rhizome, around to other areas. I think that, tilling can be useful, but like all equipment that's used with invasive exotics, it's got to be really meticulously cleaned afterwards and between areas that you're treating, so you're not dragging those around. So I don't know other than that. And I think that the key is to make sure that it's being followed up and retreated at times that are useful.
Okay, great. Thank you for your advice on that.
Could I make one comment on that, Teresa?
Yes, please.
I agree with Catherine's plan. I would spray it, mow it. What you usually have is it grows out with rhizomes. You're going to have a fringe area that's going to be your first area that wants to grow back that was underground, that you couldn't get chemical on because it was underground. But like I say, the mowing just gets it down where you can see the new shoots or whatever was covered up. It was so dense that it's hard to get chemical in there sometimes. So you spray it down the best you can, mow it, let it do its thing, but and stay on it, multiple applications. But then some form of restoration has to be done, or just a big bare ground spot is just it's an open canvas for the next invasive.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Yeah, you're right.
Yes, and I think that was part of their tillage. They were going to till it up, let it dry out some, and then take it off so that they could then replant it with our sod.
Am I hearing correctly that you are not recommending tilling it?
That's what I'm hearing.
I don't have any good experience. I don't have any experience one way or the other with tilling it. I know that spraying it and cutting it, spraying it and cutting it, spraying it and cutting it does work over time if someone's cautious. And I don't know how much tilling it will help, particularly in thick established areas. It might help on new infestations that are not really dense, but I don't know how it would work on really dense infestations. And I also wonder with the tillage, what's going to keep those propagules from being moved around on the equipment to other areas.
My only concern with tilling is you're just turning up more seed, and you're sort of trying to exhaust the seed sources there, and I don't know what type of sod, if this is a golf course area or whatever, but blanketing it with something is going to be your best bet. And if it is a Bermuda grass area, that would be fantastic if that's what it's supposed to be. If there was enough dirt there to grow the grass, I wouldn't recommend tilling, but a doctor or somebody may have a better outlook than I do on that.
To that point, so if we go back to your recommendation of spraying and cutting, how do we prevent the cutting from shooting the seeds and rhizomes and everything else all around?
Because you cut it when it's not in flower, when it's not in seed.
So that requires a little bit of management. Careful.
Yes, and it's not very prolific by seed.
Okay.
Anyway, but yes, you gotta stop the bleeding sometimes. So, your best course is just to get chemical on it, get the issue stopped. And then, like you say, you're mowing down the foliage, the plant material, the grass, letting it decompose and then staying on top of it. You're gonna have seed there that's gonna sprout. You're gonna have mist areas that were covered that are gonna sprout. You're gonna stuff that's underground. But after a couple treatments, you should gain a lot, and then restoration, it's half of your key. Because just walking away from it and saying, "Oh boy, we did a great job," yeah, it'll grow something worse when you come back.
Right.
So to take this to a logical end, you spray it when it shows seed, let that die, cut it off
Before it shows seed.
before it shows seed.
Yeah.
So then you cut it off, then it grows up again, you spray it again.
Yeah, but you're spraying it before it goes to flower and seed.
Right, okay.
You keep on cutting it. You just keep on cutting it back before it goes to flower and seed. And eventually you're starving the rhizomes so they can't reproduce anymore.
Right.
Is that correct, Catherine and Bill?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
So this is a multi-month,
Before it goes to seed.
Multi-year.
Multi-year project.
Get to spray it. That's what spray.
Then you want to be careful what your mix is on your herbicide, because you don't want to just kill the tops and not have the herbicide taken down into the roots,
Rhizome.
where you really want to get it to.
So it's not just glyphosate. It is just.
I know, I think glyphosate is a perfectly good product. You don't want to really use some, and I think that some people have a mix that they use, but you don't want to use anything like imazapyr or arsenal, whatever their names are, because that will kill trees and everything. So I think glyphosate is a good option. I was just on a site this week where it was glyphosate and something else that I don't know because I'm not a herbicide person in the mix, and they were having a really good success with it. But I don't know what that is. But I know that it's not imazapyr or whatever its trade names are.
Didn't somebody mention triclopyr? Didn't I see that in the
Triclopyr?
agenda?
Oh, yeah, that is probably what they said. And I am not knowledgeable enough about the details of how you can treat these. I think that I may have sent along a sheet about Kogon grass treatment recommendations. Did I send that to somebody or did I just imagine it?
I think she did send it, but it was a while ago.
It was from Georgia, from the state of Georgia, their highway departments, where they were recommending protocol for Kogon treatment.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that input. That's helpful. Okay, at this time, we're going to bring discussion back to the board. I want to. Do we have any motions on what to do or how to go forward with?
I don't have the aquatic weed proposal in front of me, so.
Their proposal was a 90% success rate for $194,000. There'll be 3 treatments a year in a 1-year period with a resulting kill rate of 90% of the class 1 and class 2. Did I state that right, Bill?
Move to approve that proposal.
The motion to approve, do I hear a second?
Well, second, but so for that amount, is there, do we need to find other, does this already meet our requirement?
You're just under.
Yeah, it's 195. That's why they came back with 194.
Okay, because maybe it's an old copy of the last agenda I was seeing higher, okay.
But it sure does violate our procurement policy.
Well, we did get a second proposal from SiteWorks,
And we did request other proposals.
right?
Correct.
But they were not responsive.
That is correct.
So we did,
It's a big, scary process and a huge amount of work for somebody. They'd have to dedicate a lot of crew to it over a long period of time.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Do I hear any further discussion? All those in favor?
I,
Aye. No opposition, motion passes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Now, this
Thanks, you guys.
supersedes what we did last month, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
because that was contingent
Yeah.
on approval by water management
Right.
district and us.
Yeah.
Do we,
And water management districts.
do we need to undo that?
no, because it was only approved contingent upon the approval of Dr. Bowman and me.
Okay, that is.
It's aquatics, aquatic weed,
Management.
weed,
Maintenance.
weed.
Book says management,
It does say
Management.
management, I thought it was maintenance.
Thank
My
you.
apologies.
AWM.
Yes.
All right, so unless anybody has any further questions for our engineer, David Hamstra. His business is finished. Thank you very much.
Should we take up the Kogan issues?
Yeah, with
Yes,
with Cervello.
the Kogan grass with Cervello, the proposal, now their proposal included tillage
Yes.
And sodding following the tilling.
and sodding following. Yes.
So it sounds like,
But their proposal just included spraying 3 times and then tilling.
Two
There-
times,
I thought it was 3.
2 times 3 weeks apart.
Oh,
I think that
And-
proposal needs to be redone.
yeah.
well, I was gonna say, could we maybe approve just the glyphosate portion of this proposal? So they can at least get started on that, and then the updated proposal to kind of go on to the end of this would be any ongoing or larger scope. This way we at least get started on this.
Well, the problem is that their proposal for glyphosate is 2 times, 3 weeks apart. This sounds like we're gonna need it time after time after time after time with
Yes.
a cut.
Yeah, and I'm only saying, I was gonna move that we approve just the spraying from this proposal. So at least it gets started. The beginning of it is as soon as possible versus waiting the other month to even start on anything.
To that point, don't we use glyphosate in our routine treatment around here? Could Infomark spray these areas? We have glyphosate on. And we have a,
We use-
herbicide generator.
We use the,
Hmm?
we use the glyphosate labeled for aquatics. which is different. Can't use that on land.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
I believe he can purchase with his license, we can check. But they can purchase it, and I think mark the area out so that it's sprayed inside the square in a sense, so that we're not getting crazy with it. We'll have to watch for drift and wind. We try to put signage out there to make sure the stay off till dry. Catherine would need to go over.
And then what about the mowing of it?
That we don't have the ability to do.
Right.
Technically you do. There's a red tractor and it has a mower. And it's a virgin mower and it can be cleaned after each time.
Can't get low enough, is my question.
I think so.
It's a bush hog.
No, that's a grass mower. Out behind the trailer, there's a red mower. It goes with that tractor. We bought it. for
Is it a
cutting.
belly mower or is it a rear attachment?
It's a under.
Belly mower. It's a belly mower.
Yeah,
It sits under the belly of the tractor.
Rotary, yeah, it's a rotary mower for cutting grass. You have the equipment to cut it. If you go look at it, I'll bet you it'll cut down to 1.5 inches.
It's low enough. I think they want to scout, so their soil, so you're exposing.
It's got roller wheels, take the roller wheels off, it'll cut right down on the ground if you want it. But look at it, I think that equipment was bought just for special purposes like this. Areas that we needed to cut.
I know we can spray it, and I'll
Right.
direct, we'll definitely look into it, but Catherine still needs to make sure that.
Sure.
To oversee it, if we can't get it low enough. Well, it's not a big area.
Also, could certainly cut it. But the deal is, we don't want, I think we want control of that mower after it leaves that area to make sure it's clean.
Ideally, it should be cleaned up right there on site,
Yes,
but
It must be, yes.
right. And so the problem is,
Well, that's, yeah.
can you bet that Cervello's gonna do that?
Well, that's it. The cleaning right there on site is, we need to do it, we should do it as a practice. But the more critical thing is if we are tilling it,
yeah, if you're removing rhizomes.
because it's the rhizomes that will propagate and spread. Actually, cone grass doesn't spread very significantly. Well, they say it doesn't spread
By seed.
significantly by seed.
Got
I
it.
don't know how we're ending up with all of these.
I don't either,
It
but
that's-
doesn't.
Well, Cervello's mowers may be carrying it in because they're universal through all the property, right? But my
Well, we
point
have
is,
it on 192. I think it's coming in.
my point is with that mower, that could be a single purpose use of that mower is just to cut that. They could spray it, they could cut it, wouldn't even have to clean it, just get the mower out of there and only bring it back when it's time to cut it again. It could be done in-house. You got the equipment, you got the guy. All you need is the chemical and we can buy that.
sorry,
Yeah.
it's just decorative. It's not,
Yeah.
it's not practical.
Okay, so is there any opposition to trying to do this in-house or doing it in-house? Hearing none.
Require a motion and all?
No.
We discussed it?
It's
Okay.
part of their, Vincent, you're comfortable with what we're trying to do here? The other guy's gonna be out there doing it.
Are we good?
And we'll have Brad.
Brad will be
Brad.
spraying.
Yeah,
Brad will be the right
Right.
form. Vincent would oversee. We need to get more work to get it painted off. We'll get some signage out. They also try.
Okay.
Gotta figure out a little bit more.
Thank you.
All right, wonderful.
That takes care of that.
All right, we're going on to district council's report.
Okay, excuse me.
We have a sun problem.
Yes. Well, good evening. So I've submitted my written report and what was in the agenda was a wee bit different, so I'll just go in that order if that's okay. The first subject is the subject of what is a requirement for serving on the board. So the statute says all elected board members must be qualified electors. Qualified elector means any person at least 18 years of age who's a citizen of the United States, a legal resident of Florida and of the district. That turns out to be the operative language there. So an elected board member must be a legal resident of the district. The statute does not define when a vacancy occurs. There was an attorney general opinion that's not on point, but and it deals with the special district, although a totally different kind, but it cites to the Constitution as instructive. The Constitution is not on all fours because this isn't a office created by the Constitution, but again, it's instructive, just like a dictionary is. Vacancy in office shall occur upon the failure to maintain the residence required when elected. So when I was first asked this question, I said to Supervisor Castle, and this was 2 times ago, I said, well, this is really clear. And then she said, well, yeah, but it doesn't really talk about this vacancy issue. So last month I said, you know what, if it's okay with the board, let me reach out to my contacts at the Attorney General's office. Now, I need to be very clear for the record. Now it's verbatim. And isn't that a joy reading what we say at the last meeting? I did not make a formal request to the Attorney General, nor did I make an informal request. So a golden rule that I was taught is you don't ask a question unless you know the answer before you ask. And so this is in the nature of reaching out to my friends and contacts who are in the opinions department of the AG, just to go through it and talk as 2 attorneys. And so basically she followed the same line of logic. Now, the interesting thing she did indicate is that the Attorney General wouldn't address this question because it's a mixed issue of law and fact. And it all goes down to what does it mean to be a qualified elector of the district? And you have to be a resident of the district in order to be on the board. So that's the summary.
In order to not only be elected, but to continue to serve on the board? That's the question. right?
Because all elected board members must be qualified electors of the district, and a qualified elector is a legal resident of the district. Now, this is where the practice of law, as Madam Chair knows, many statutes dealing with, because there's many different types of officers with many different types of terms for the office, and many of those statutes specifically define how a vacancy is created. That's what's missing in chapter 190. So, for what it's worth, that's why I say, you know what, I still feel safe citing to the Constitution. And so that's the law on that subject. Moving along. The next.
Okay,
Oh,
well, the question then comes in, we have a supervisor who.
Well,
has-
first, wait, let's ask him, have you moved or are
My
you still
legal
here?
residency has not changed.
Okay,
So,
is your intent,
My legal residency has not changed.
so you have not moved out of Harmony?
I need to ask a specific question.
Okay.
As, is it your intent to change your principal residence to a location outside of the district?
My legal residency has not changed. You can go back and forth all you want. I'm not going to change my answer.
All right, then you're dismissed. Did you enter into a mortgage that requires that within 60 days of that mortgage that you establish a principal residence at another location outside the district?
Madam Chairwoman, with all due respect, I've answered your question. This is not a deposition nor a trial. I answered your question. My legal residency has not changed. When it does, if it does, you'll know. This is a policy setting board, not an inquisition board. Thank you very much. Move on. I'm not changing my answer.
Well, there's no way we can ask the proper question to the Attorney General's office until, I mean, I think it's well settled, and I'll just lay it out.
For whatever reason,
Mr.
you want me
Barrett.
off the board. That's what it comes down to. Your entire family, every adult in your family has written about where I may or may not live multiple times in public forums
Excuse
in the
me,
last
you're
month.
out of order.
Oh, sure, I am. So are you.
What a bully. You've turned out, you were
I certainly
really
am.
Guys,
unruly.
excuse
Certainly
me,
am.
excuse me. The conversation is with the board. Our attorney has opined. The statutes are very clear as to who can serve. The case law is very clear as to who can serve. It boils down to intent, and the intent is whether Mr. Berube, because he has physically moved out of the neighborhood. So he is physically not residing in the neighborhood right now. The question is whether his intent is to establish principal residence outside of Harmony.
legal, well, I'll just say legal
It's
residence.
Principal residency outside. That's what it turns on, is where is your principal residency?
And maybe
Okay.
that's the same as legal residency.
Right.
I'm just giving you the statute language. I know you love that.
So the question is, are you, I guess what the question, are you lying to us now that your principal residence is still in Harmony? Or did you mislead and lie to the loan company?
I've answered your question 3 times. My legal residence has not changed. How much more direct can I be? And I'm not going to change from that. You can spend the next 3 hours asking whatever questions you want. I'm not going to change. That's it. You and the lady next to you both want me off the board for whatever reason.
That's not
We
true.
It's been the
All right.
track forever.
The issue here.
The
and
issue is
correct-
I'm not going to change my mind.
The question is, if we move forward with an individual who is not qualified to sit on this board, we will be, the whole Harmony CBD will possibly open ourselves up to having any decision that we make with Mr. Berube voting on the board under challenge.
You're saying if indeed there's a vacancy. The other interesting fact, didn't, I was talking to you about it, but it was about you. Doesn't your term end at the end of this year?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's there definitely would be a vacancy at that point, Madam Chair.
Right. The statute, 190 says.
Well, before you go there, Mr. Berube has stated, at least online, that he intends to run again. No, you don't? You've taken that? You're no longer. Okay.
No, that's not gonna
It
happen.
says, members of the board shall be known as supervisors upon entering office and shall take and subscribe to the oath. They shall hold office for the terms of which they were elected or appointed, or until their successors are chosen and qualified. If during the term of office a vacancy occurs, the remaining members of the board shall fill the vacancy by appointment. And a vacancy occurs when, according to the law, and this is stating from our supervisor of elections, qualifications for elected office, says any residency requirement for an office is a continuous one. Failure to maintain the residency throughout the term results in vacancy in the office. And that's based on Section 3, Article 10 of the Florida Constitution. And so at this point in time, based on his intent, he signed a mortgage stating his intent to establish his principal residency outside of our district. He has since moved all of his belongings from his home to that location. He is living in that location. He's no longer residing in the district. So at this point, we have a vacancy and we need to move forward on filling that vacancy.
It's all a wonderful hypothesis, but my legal residency has not changed.
And how is it that you state that if you are no longer
There's a
living here?
process to changing your legal residency, and it hasn't changed.
In other words, what you're saying
Instead of
is.
jumping on me and kicking dirt in my grave before the body's.
I'm just
even
asking
broke,
some
why don't you
questions
just
here,
leave a
Steve.
little bit of time? Maybe it all works itself out. Ever think about that?
So I'm just asking some questions and I'm not trying to get you off the board. I feel you have been a very valued member of the board for many years. You've made a lot of great decisions that have benefited the community. And I'm just trying to do what is the appropriate thing to do based on, who we are as a community and who we are as a board. There's nobody that I'm thinking of to replace you or anything like that. And I think that I'll miss your perspective on the board. Honestly, I think I'll miss your perspective on the board. But still, fair is fair. And, if you're no longer a resident, the appropriate thing to do is to vacate. Now, if you want another month to change your driver's license and your voter's registration and all of that, I understand that. And
There is a principle involved here. And I know what's everybody saying. I get it. What I'm telling you is, I didn't say I was going to stay here forever. I didn't say, and I know what I said about running, that was just to irritate people.
Yeah.
Which it does. Get certain people fired up. But I choose my words carefully. But I understand the process. And my legal residency has not changed. That's the answer to the whole question, which is just let it play out. It's not that big of a deal.
when you say let it play out, what does that mean?
Obviously, my legal residency is going to change at some point. When that does, you'll know it. And I haven't even looked at the statute, what the time frame is or anything like that. I just haven't done it.
Well,
I've been a little bit busy. I'm trying to earn a living too.
According to your mortgage documents, it's 60 days from when you signed your documents. So,
How do you know what my mortgage documents say?
because they're in the public record.
Oh, you went rid of my mortgage. Wow.
And that would be May 21st.
Talk about an obsession.
Which the important
Rules are the
factor
rules.
at this point in time is that this board needs to move forward to be ready to fill Mr. Berube's seat when that time comes. And I think it would help everyone involved if Mr. Berube would just let us know if it will be, on May 21st, or will it be before May 21st?
When's our next board meeting? What's the date of the next?
It'll be
The last Thursday is the 26th.
May
26th, thank you. So we are, I'm okay with having Mr. Berube stay on the board until our next board meeting. And in the interim, we can be looking for someone to fill the seat. And is that sit okay with you, Mr. Berube?
When you get to the next meeting, I mean, if there is if something has, changed significantly in that time frame, we'd still, I don't think the business of the board is at risk. We still can, unless there are 3 or 4 people here, we have a quorum, we can be able to proceed. So in that sense, I too, answering the question, if your legal residence is still in within the district and everything, let's, your words, let play out.
All right. So the next item on the agenda, or?
Yes, the next item on the agenda was a plan for determining CDD ownership of lands within the district. So my plan has 4 parts. 1, we continue to gather the official documents. Working with the clerk's office and the property appraiser's office. I did meet with the clerk's office on the 19th of this month. I'm learning and feel like I'm grasping a reliable process to go through and find the deeds to the CDD. Also, this is a very technical area, and I mentioned at the last meeting that I would reach out to a real estate expert. I've done that. We had some initial discussions and need more time to get a little more input. I've also reached out to Bruce Vickers and Scott Randolph, two good friends, to ask about specialists in the area. I think where you would need a specialist is when you're gonna, when we get all the deeds from the grantee index, and then what I understand you guys want to do is then go back to when the district was formed and to see if there's a discrepancy. That's where I believe you'll need a title company. I would recommend one with an attorney in-house that has that specialist. And then, of course, have begun the process. What I realize is that each time land was dedicated to the district, it happened at a publicly noticed meeting. The deed was submitted in the agenda packet, and the deeds were prepared so that your district didn't have that expense by the developers council. And on each of those deeds, it says prepared by X and such law firm, like Kristen Idle for Mr. German. And I forget the young man's name.
David.
You know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. So reaching out to them for what records they have. I have my team going through, trying to find what we have.
Hostetler?
That was it.
Hostetler.
The firm is Baker Hostetler. The attorney's name was David Baker, maybe?
Maybe.
I don't know. Maybe it was Baker Hostetler, but you know what I'm saying? It says on the top of the deeds who it was prepared by. So we reach out to them and say, provide that as well. So I think, it'll take a process and it'll take some time, but certainly each time it's really been exciting to be able to learn more about this and look into it. And everybody is very helpful at the
Council.
Yeah, the constitution officers there are very helpful and they're willing to help. And so this is all tried and true stuff. And if you're a real estate attorney, I think a lot of this is it's what they deal in every day. But I think before you guys need to expend that amount, we can do a lot to get things to the table and get you a good idea where you stand, so you're not spending extra money. And as we do that and these other processes, this plan would continue to crystallize. So that's the due diligence on that in a nutshell. And I believe, other than what we submitted in our written report, the last item on my report was already addressed by your engineer.
Just to go back to the deed issue. So you're not suggesting that we work with a title company at this time to determine?
No, because we really, I mean, basically the question presented is, hey, we think there may be, at this point, we think there may be properties out there that were deeded to us, but we don't know about that. Well, let's start by gathering what we do know about. And then for these tricky things, I think if there are any, that's when we could use the expertise. But also the way I do this is when I call these folks, because you know, as an attorney, Madam Chair, it's like people want free and you're busy and it's time. I always say, look, I would pay you for your help to just point me in the right direction. And most good attorneys, when you get to them through a friend they know, like Bruce Vickers or Scott, they're like, oh yeah, but they don't end up charging me, but I offer for my time. So my recommendation, let's just keep gathering the information, see what we compile. I think we can make a huge, if what you're ultimately seeking is sort of like a Harmony CDD created index of all the properties, you know, all those records are, the official records are kept. Well, then the real tricky problem is going to be say, well, where are these official records wrong? And that's where you're going to need somebody who can dig in and go back to when it was created. And
Right.
A question to you, counsel, when do we believe that we can trust the property appraiser's office?
I don't think they're doing anything nefarious, but they
Well,
do make mistakes.
I understand, here's where I'm going, right?
For
So,
instance, the estates. The property appraiser's office shows we own it, but they can't point us to a deed that gives us
the overall estate.
well, the parks within the estates and all of those. I
So,
hate to say common areas, because I know you don't like it,
systems and facilities.
Here's
all
where I'm
of
going.
those,
When you
yes.
look at the property appraiser's site, right, you can bring up Harmony and you can, you know,
Click on individual
drill down
parcels.
and get each parcel, right?
Mhm.
And I've never done it because my computer screen isn't big enough, but can you get an overall view of all the parcels in Harmony that the property appraiser says we own?
Well, what you can get is a bunch of plat, and I've seen them, they're huge map, and when you try to pull up those plat, and I'm sorry, I was like, I decided, I know.
You're going where I was.
Hey, I know, so it's like, when you try to look at those plat books on the computer, I need a pair of magnifying glasses, but at the appraiser's office, it's all. Yeah, but the plot, interestingly enough, the plat is not what governs, because this is under the statute of frauds, and so any property owned by the district has to be in writing.
You gotta have the paper.
You have to have, yeah, it's the statute of frauds, signed by somebody, witnessed by two people, notarized. And by the way, this was done at your regularly scheduled meetings.
That's what we need to find. Again,
This
we
becomes a
can't-
huge problem.
some of it's very easy to find, some of it's right there. The property appraiser has the link to the deed and it's easy to get there. Other things like the areas in the estates that are known as open areas or
Infrastructure.
Systems and
It's common areas.
Our land.
Common areas.
systems and
Yeah.
facilities.
But anyway, those areas are not linked to a deed, and the question is, if we don't have a deed to those, if that fell through a crack somewhere back when, we need to get that cleaned up and get ownership over to the
Well,
city.
I guess my question
So-
for that is, if the property appraiser says you own, right, that's, so you pick up an area in the estates, which
Mhm.
apparently you've done. And you went to look for a link to a deed.
Right.
So you have the red line around that says how many CDD owns this, you click on it, no deed. My obvious, maybe this is too obvious, how did the property appraiser know that we owned it if they don't have a deed recorded somewhere?
Well, but what they do, this is not an exact science, because when you look at a deed, what it has is a legal description.
Right.
And of course, there are experts, and in law school, they taught us the one thing for the bar exam, make sure it forms a complete.
Right.
That's all I know
It's
about it.
gotta connect.
But when you're a property appraiser, they only look at a partial. And I am not an expert in this, this is what I heard from that company,
Okay.
title clerk that we talked to, it's been going on for a while now. But she said that, like, the property appraiser only looks at a partial description, so everybody's trying to do the best they can, but look, the property appraiser, even though that's what is official and what is sent to the tax collector for collection, that can't possibly trump the deed that's recorded in the official records.
And so we have properties like in the estates that everybody presumes we own, but we may not have a deed to it. We have properties out there like U1, U2, I mean, these got us into a lawsuit. So this is why it's so important that we know what we own, which for whatever reason, we lost track of. I mean, we see back in 2007, we knew we owned it. 2009, we knew we owned it. It looks like in 2017 was when that.
It all went haywire.
Right. And so we have both ends sides of the coin.
Can I suggest something while we do this? Whatever happened in 2006, you gotta have a jumping off
Well, I
point.
know 2017 is the major point, and that's where Starwood sold to other entities.
Starwood went to Sunterra, and then Sunterra
Right.
resold to Harmony.
And Starwood sold properties that had previously been deeded to us. But again, that's a big point right there. So that's one major point we need to look at. But the other point we need to look at is, were these turning over of lands, like Tim explained, were they followed through and a deed recorded? Or was a deed executed and then it got turned over to somebody and never ended up in the clerk's office? And that's the other question. So there are two different.
The jumping off point should be from September of 2017 to December of 2017, because that's when Sunterra went, I mean,
Bought it from Starwood.
Starwood went to Sunterra, and then Sunterra carved it all up and sold it to Harmony
Retail.
Retail or whatever it is.
Compass Trading.
And that probably made a big mess of a whole bunch of stuff. And those may finger out into other things, but if you gotta have a starting point, that might be.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm sorry, but that's where the mistake happened, because perhaps some deed did not get recorded earlier on,
Right, and you
and
lose the little piece.
you lose what showed that we owned it, and
Circle
so
gets
that's
broken.
why, yeah.
Well, but in the one instance we have, not but, in the one instance, I'm not disagreeing with you at all, I'm agreeing with you. In the one instance we have, your deed was recorded and it was transferred anyhow. And remember, it's not as if the developer had every incentive to give you that land. There's not a developer in the state of Florida that's still in business, that's just giving away land.
Sure.
And there's not a developer that has a good reputation as, and I know it gets a little testy between CDDs, but the developers in this community, they have professionals who go through this process. Does that, mistakes are made? Absolutely, but when they're incentivized to do the right thing. And so the only thing I would caution the board on is to say, well, gee, something crazy happened and there's a lot of problems. We just don't know that yet. That's just pure speculation.
Right.
But, a couple of things. Number one, we've got two significant parcels, bless you, upon which debt service was never levied.
Oh, I'm glad you said that.
So, because, yes,
That was the last thing, is that the board needs to make a motion for Elizabeth to add those properties to the roll.
so moved.
And if you look, it's under new business.
Seconded.
Thank you
We'll
for
do it
that.
now.
You guys
I have a
can shut
motion.
up about that.
Seconded.
I have a second to add parcels.
Yes, I can.
That
They
big
are
square over there and that other
parcels
piece over there.
3026 3.229890010 GA0 across from Harmony Community School, also known as GA, and the parcel across access for Cat Lake, which is 3026 32 3117 001 is that J5.
Last month, Madam Chair,
Okay,
to
we
put
have-
something in between here, you asked, I mentioned that there was a reason these didn't get on the roll. And I thought about it, because you said, well, what's the reason? I said, I'm too old to remember, right? Well,
Did you come up?
I thought, yes. At some point, I asked somebody a long time ago, and the reason they weren't on the roll is because they were originally designated as commercial.
Or recreational.
Well, commercial record, some other purpose. The one across the street from the school was gonna have a gas station, a pool, and a convenience store on it. And for whatever reason.
Okay, I've heard of pool, a swimming
Just a
pool.
The
Yeah.
original plan was a gas station, convenience store, and a swimming pool. That was the original concept. And the one down by Cat Lake was gonna be some commercial use
Recreational.
over there as well. So they never gonna put it on the roll at that point for that reason. Now, they should be,
Well,
because,
commercial would have been on the rolls though.
well, the golf course is
No.
building in it. Town Square is it?
Yeah.
Town Square is, I
Yes.
mean,
Yeah.
the building,
Yes.
the retail.
When we looked into it, it was due because they were originally
Supposed to
set up
come to the
for
CBD.
recreational facilities of some sort.
Yeah.
And then obviously.
still
the
haven't-
district would own them.
Yeah, I
Sorry.
have that,
That's
all
why.
that showing.
I have
the
a
last
marketing, piece of marketing material showing the parcel across from the school as a community pool.
The aspirational map of harmony.
So we have,
Legally, the only thing that matters is the property receiving a special
Right.
peculiar benefit? And if so, you
Definitely
reasonably
is.
apportion the debt.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second to add these two parcels to our assessment rolls. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposition.
And just so you know, as soon as the preliminary budget gets done, Elizabeth can add them. We're just waiting on.
And so that will put them on the next year's tax.
And that would go on as raw acreage, right?
Yes.
do we know what the amount is that's going to add to our revenue? No
We
idea.
don't until the accountants finish your budget, and then she'll be able to give you a ballpark figure. That was asked today. And so.
It's just under 9 acres altogether.
All right. Anything else for our attorney?
I don't think we killed them.
Yeah, and then the other
Please tell me that
the other parcel was Central Park. So you said you were gonna look into that because part of that, because it was a
That's-
split parcel and part of it was road frontage? And did you find anything about it?
That parcel is being assessed. For both bond debt and
Yes,
for O&M. So it's being assessed. Again, I haven't found anything that explains why it's separated out. And hopefully, as we go through property ownership, we might find a little bit.
That's the one where the other piece of that parcel is up near 192.
Yeah,
And there's a break in between, but
Yeah.
yeah.
there's wetlands in between.
Wetlands, yeah, conservation. That we don't own yet. Nothing less for our council, we will call our field manager.
Thank you, sir.
Thank y'all.
Look
Forward to a speedy resolution. to the end of this
Field
meeting.
Services Director.
I'm sorry, field services director.
Too bad you can't make a motion.
To adjourn? If I could, I'd have tried it. Before my report.
Okay, we've done away with some of your work already.
Somebody's on a roll today. It's a
Click,
tough
click,
act to
click.
follow.
Yeah, it is, Brad. You know it.
All right, so, you do have the field report in front of you.
One quick question for you.
Absolutely.
I didn't say it in front of Cervello, but are they being responsive to these things?
So,
Has it changed?
yes, I did get, we've asked. This report here in front of you that was under separate cover, okay, the first one, which has the Harmony CD previous. This is internal. This is done by Vincent, where he's going back through the previous audit, following up with what's been completed, what hasn't been completed, and noting it for you all to review, okay? The second part, which answers your question, after we did the April audit, and we sent it off to Cervello, we were getting responses, but they would be in the form of an email. Okay, so an email would come in and say items 1 through 3 were completed, proposal coming. Then we get another email, items 8 through so-and-so were completed, and we'd send the proposal. So what I responded back to Pete, Scotty, and the team was, I don't need them trickling in. That makes it hard for us to follow which is been completed, which is not. So what we want is within 5 days, work on the list that once you get it, mark what's been completed, but then give us actionable service dates on the remainder of the items to be completed. That was sent to them last week, early last week. So when Vincent does his May inspection, we should see that then transition into a singular response, whether it's this format, whether it's, you know, going into the PDF and adding a note and then saving it as notes, however they see fit.
Can I make a suggestion? I did this as a resident several years ago. Is there any reason not to just have like an online document that, you know, anyone with a phone would be able to go in and in real time make whatever updates to each action item as they come up, rather than having this.
Like
you
a
know,
Google
communicating
Doc.
back- Exactly that.
Well, so the app we use on our phone generates a PDF, right? So that's a working doc. They can add notes to it as they complete it. Like that day, they can have a copy of it when Pete is done during the day.
Okay, so
they
yeah.
open it back up and add a note.
Yes.
All right, so there's still a single shared document. Okay, I hear
Yes.
about emails back and forth.
Right, so what they were doing was basically responding back to the document via email
Here and there.
here and
Bits
there.
and pieces.
Yes.
So what I'm hearing here is that there has not been a complete and total change in the way they respond to your request for service. It's still hit or miss.
Well, it's better. It sounds
Well, what
like
I would
it's
say is there's
better.
improvement from lack of response, period, right?
Okay,
So
Okay.
there is improvement. We're asking them to refine that, which will then go into one of my notes. I will give an update. The landscape RFP is underway. We did have 6 proposers. All 6 did show up at the pre-bid meeting. We did make a slight adjustment to the maintenance map versus the one that was provided, where the right-of-way mowings that you have on Caprior, Schoolhouse, 5 Oaks that are in front of residential homes. When we originally designed the map, it was just oversight on my part, and actually kudos to Cervello for calling it out and actually being honest with it. They said the side roads, some of the side roads that are off those main drags that they actually are responsible for maintaining were included on the map. So they did. That is a good thing because other vendors would have proposed it. The question and answer period did pass. We did have some questions there. We did provide answers. So everything's moving smoothly with landscape RFP. We should receive proposals. And I apologize, I don't have the date etched in my head, but it will be here. So the May meeting, we will have a bid summary together that has, it's not necessarily gonna be ranked. It's just gonna show an alphabetized order of the vendors, their pricing for year 1, year 2, year 3, optional year 4, year 5. And you know, everything that we've discussed. There will be a optional price to not include right-of-way mowing. Again, that's all board discussion at that point. I don't know if we can remove it. If we can't, just telling you, you'll see it. And then there can be open discussion at that point, but you'll have numbers and time for your budget, which is great news because now you can set whether whoever the vendor is, whatever the number is, to now etch that and lock it in for your budget. All vendors were made well aware of an October 1 start. Okay.
But there's nothing that holds this board to start.
Absolutely not.
October 1. You can start earlier if you so choose.
Correct. The only thought to that would be if it's drastically higher than your current budget, can you afford to make that adjustment? And that's again a board decision, but I'm pointing it out as an FYI. Okay. So the field reports there, if you have any questions, you can ask. I can go through that. Vincent is doing the field reports and is doing a great job with them. We're gonna probably get Vincent into some training with some of our other field managers to get some best management practice. It's always good, you know, there's strengths that he has, but not everybody who's a former landscaper or horticulturalist, he can go out and tell you what's what and what's going on with it, and that's no detriment to Vincent, right? So we're gonna provide that training and get him in there. There are proposals for UTVs and utility vehicles in the agenda. Want to make a point of clarification on that? There's some.
There's one page with the name of an item and the cost, but
Not
no
necessarily
descriptions of them.
Right. So the reasoning behind that is obviously, you know, the board's well aware of the incident that took place with one of their field staff members that did total a Kawasaki mule. And then we had a theft of the Viking. So currently field staff has an Infomark truck, the Harmony truck, Polaris, which is having some issues. Has that been repaired yet, Vincent? Okay, we can get that in. And then there's one more utility, the UMax. Sorry, so there's 4. We're trying to get the 2 that were basically out of our control. Well, I shouldn't say that. The 2 missing ones replaced as quickly as possible under insurance claims. Angel's working on the insurance side of it. We have the UMax still on order. I did get an update from Kissimmee Motorsports. It's probably gonna be July, August before we see it.
If you're lucky.
If we're lucky. I have been following up with them via email, but we did ask at the same time to send over some additional pricing for what they have in inventory. And I think a solid solution is, instead of staying so focused and localized in the Orlando Kissimmee area, we need to look
Broader.
outwards, whether it's Miami,
I don't know what's gonna
Broward.
be any
Here's a
different.
suggestion for you. The vehicle you need to buy is another one of those Polarises, so you have another vehicle that can legally tow the pressure washer. And the only way you can do that with any of these UTVs is with that Polaris XD. It's made for that. You can also buy that on the Sourcewell contract directly from Polaris Commercial and Government in Minnesota, the factory. 99% of the time, they have them available to go, and your pricing is already set up on Sourcewell, which is accepted by everybody for government bids. It's a discount, and that's how we bought the last one. You could probably accomplish that in less than 2 weeks, if that's the way the board wants to go. That's how we bought the last one. And
I still need to get a quote though, correct?
oh, they'll give you a quote. Yeah, he asked for a Sourcewell quote. I can send you all that information.
So what we'll probably do is, if we get that, we can probably get it over into the May agenda for approval.
I'm looking at this Yamaha Viking quote 16808. If I remember right, the Polaris was right around that money. It's probably going up a little bit, but the Polaris should be less than $18,000.
And it's got better towing.
It's got the absolute towing capacity that you need. Yes, it's a diesel.
Now, all of the ones before us are gasoline or diesel. We had talked about wanting to go to all electric. There is a new Polaris out there that should have the towing capacity and everything that we need. So let's just be sure to check and verify that before. And in the replacement of the other ones, we want to try and get the electric versus, because the maintenance costs on the.
Oh, the electric is the way to go, except when you have to tow. All of these utility vehicles have, the target market is 1,500 pounds of capacity. They all sit right at 1,500 pounds. The Polaris with the diesel is 2,500. That's why it stands out in the market. It's made for governments and commercial. And we need that for that pressure washer because of the weight. If you don't get the 2,500 pound capacity, then they got to put 50 gallons of water in the pressure washer instead of 250. And they're back and forth all day long going across town, get 50 gallons of water. It makes no sense. But only the Polaris XD in the entire market has that capacity. But I agree with you, the electric's the way to go, without a doubt.
I had heard that there was a Polaris electric that had come out that rivals that.
They
so-
just came out with it. I saw it quickly. I didn't look at the tow capacity. If it's got 2,500 pounds of capacity, without a doubt.
Dan's
go for the
looking it
electric.
up.
However, you're gonna have a problem with getting one because of the chip shortage. That's the problem with all these electrics. They all need chips and nobody has chips.
It's not just electrics.
Oh, I know, yeah, no, it's a lot of stuff, cars and trucks,
Okay,
but they all need chips,
So
so.
you're gonna be further.
We're gonna continue, we're gonna expand the search. So again,
Dan, are you looking at that?
I'm trying to, yeah.
Polaris Commercial and Government. They have a separate website.
while
Okay.
Dan's looking, I can continue tree, unless you have something specific.
What else do we have?
Well, I was gonna give a tree trimming update.
Okay.
Polaris.
Government.
I didn't want that recording to be crazy. So tree trimming update, I did get an email from B&B. They did turn in an invoice saying they were completed, that the invoice is wrong. They included the pine tree removals at the estates into the not to exceed of $10,000. So there was like $1,000 additional pine trees. That was a separate cost. So I've reached back out to Matthew and asked for, obviously the $1,000 credit in terms of being out here to trim for that $1,000 and re-invoicing. I have not gotten a response at this time. I was able to go out today and review some of the trees. He did provide pictures, which was shared with the board today as well, that both those emails came in today from B&B. So we are reviewing some before and afters. There was some larger limbs removed from trees. And I think going forward, what we will be doing is definitely more hand holding is probably a better way to describe it. I think there was too much lag time in between what we discussed versus contract being signed versus work being executed. I think there was discussion in that term that was lost in translation. So we will be probably, marking trees, marking trees probably for him that we want to be identified to be trimmed. And going forward in that regard. So then the next discussion would be, once he's done, is for the board to discuss where we want to move forward with the tree trimming process. For the most part, his cuts are professional, from what we're seeing, versus some of the previous work that was done by other providers.
So did you say that B&B is complete on the work we contracted them to do?
Not yet.
Oh,
So we
okay,
can
that's what
further
you said.
discuss this at the next.
Yeah,
Oh.
they're not completed yet. They misinvoiced and
they have a little
they have a little bit more money they owe us, trimming services they owe us for the money we're paying.
Okay.
And I put in my email that it was complete, so that's where you're.
Well, I also thought I heard Brett say it too. That's why I was
Yeah, but no,
confused.
they have a little more.
The only last quick question I have is the UTVs that are damaged. Well, there's one that's already back there, right? There's another mule that's pretty much two mules. The mule that was damaged in the vehicle accident and one that's been cannibalized and not been used for a while.
Have three. LM 400, red one. You have the white Bobcat, which has lost an axle. You have the mule, which was damaged in the vehicle accident.
Right, those three, we need to sell them.
The damage the mule that was in the accident, don't do.
We
do
can't sell it.
anything
We
with
can't
that.
sell it yet.
Don't touch it, don't do anything with it until insurance inspects it and then gives us the go ahead to do whatever.
But the other two we need to get, I think Tim helps with that, doesn't he, with the.
We have a disposal policy.
Yeah.
Written disposal.
Right, we gotta advertise it. Does
And it
the
goes
council
into
help with that or?
no.
Doug's no? Sorry,
I mean,
Tim.
you
Just follow the
can if
policy.
you want, but no.
You can do an online auction too. That's part of the policy.
And then it just goes into surplus revenue.
We'll get working on that. That was all I have.
All right. Thank you.
Unless you
So-
have anything else.
Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, just, I know we got an email from a resident who lives on an interior street asking about tree trimming. So I was just wondering what,
Was that the one that talked, they used the term
airspace, yes.
Yeah, that's, I went by that and that tree is so far off their house. I don't
Really?
know.
we did get pictures. I
Water
had Vincent
by
go
that
by and give me
and-
pictures as well. It's not even close to within 5 feet at this time.
Wow.
Yeah.
So have you responded to them then?
Well, I was,
You will be.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I've never had this request yet, but we did get a request from a resident who wants to plant trees. Is it in the right of ways?
All right, yeah.
Does that come before the board, or do you just automatically authorize them that they can plant trees?
As long as.
It's in, so a little more clarification, it's in the estates. And this particular house does not have in between the sidewalk and the road any street trees. They are putting them in themselves. They requested laurel oaks on their landscape plan. I suggested back live oaks because laurels tend to have more prone to disease and decline a little bit quicker.
And they drop a lot of wood.
Yeah, so that was the discussion I had with them. If you feel that we need to.
Street trees are largely live oaks in there, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, but this house doesn't have.
Well, I understand that,
And
but you want it to be.
They want, they're agreeing to light ups, right?
They've agreed to it, and I also made sure to make them aware that they need to call 811 prior to installation in that right of way. We don't want to see a bobcat flying in the air, and I'm not talking about an animal. I'm not an expert.
So my question is, if we get these requests, this is the first one I had since I've been here. Is it policy? I couldn't find anything in your
Because there is
policy
nothing about
procedures.
this.
Right, so do they come to the board or are you
Yes, I
allowing them
would-
just to plan?
I would suggest they come to the board because
before
if
approving
we
it?
say you can do whatever, you can plan, then people interpret that as we can do whatever we want without needing to go through the board and that, will end up in,
Some people already have.
Well, do we need it to come before the board or can our district staff
handle it.
evaluate and approve? It seems. like-
Yes, yeah, I
if it's
suppose
in line
that's,
with-
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then
So,
bring
meets
to
the
us
community
anything,
standard.
anything that,
Ratification type thing,
right.
just to update you.
Because-
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
Because along Bear Grass, you could all sycamores, you wouldn't want to tell people you gotta use a live oak. And where there's live oaks, you wouldn't want to say,
Right.
hey, you gotta use the sycamore, right? So these folks know what we have, and as long as it meets the
Right.
community standard, plant away.
yeah. And of course, I'm sure that you'll recommend trees that are less likely to pull up sidewalks and have disease and,
Well, live oak isn't gonna fall in the first part of that. but it-
Live oak-
sure.
The live oaks aren't as bad as the sycamores.
Perfect, I'll recommend coconut palms to everyone.
Probably not.
Okay, so.
That's all I have. Thank you.
On to our district manager's report.
So real fast, couple of things, super fast, actually. I checked on meeting spaces. You asked, I did talk to the tavern. It is the small room, members room, no charge, holds up to 30 people. The only reason you can't do the larger room or they're willing to do this room is because we wouldn't be bumped off. We could do our year advertisement and that's why. The bigger room would be according to if they had parties,
Paying
events,
party,
right, whatever. No charge to that. Library, same thing. You have to call every single month or every single time and see if a meeting room is available.
Back up a second to no charge. You could get the ballroom for no charge?
No,
Oh,
no, the members room.
okay.
yeah,
Fee
the
for
problem, the problem with the ballroom is that they can bump
They can
us.
bump
Yeah, I
us,
understand.
and we can't be bumped.
Well, for once in a while,
No, 'cause it has to be advertised. Our meetings has to be
I
advertised.
understand, but it's just the address, not necessarily the.
I see what he's
Yeah, that'd
saying,
be
where
amazing.
we could, well,
It
but
has to be advertised exactly where you're having it.
which it'd be the same street address. Well,
Same
my question
address.
is, if we are a paying customer paying for the use of their facility, how would they then bump us?
They bump us for somebody with more money, a bigger party.
And, but let's be clear, I did not ask about the ballroom. I asked
Okay.
about having a meeting, we advertise a year in advance. We can't be bumped. That was the problem with before, and they said, well, we can definitely give you the members room, it holds 30 people at no charge, and you will not be bumped.
Having been in meetings in that members room, it's probably worse than this. Supervisor Castle has been there.
Yeah, not for a while. So I don't know if they've done any revision to the space. It's, it's not really well set up for a meeting that it's narrow and it's not long
30 people standing room, but once you have the table and
Yeah.
everything set up.
and chairs.
It's tough.
So I'm happy to keep looking, library again, surrounding hotels, none of which we can book out. a year.
So how about this? What if we were to ask them for the ballroom, find out what they would want to charge us, and ask them if they had to bump us from the ballroom, could they guarantee us the interior room, the members' room?
Okay.
Does that sound like a possible plan?
Well, I
I
mean,
need to ask Tim. So
It's the
if-
same
if
building.
We advertise for a year and say it's at the ballroom at the tavern and we get bumped and it goes to the meeting room. Even though it's the same address, it's just a different room, but we've advertised the ballroom for the year. Does that mean we have to re-advertise just because it's the same address?
I don't think so. You guys want me to ask the Attorney General?
No.
Just advertise the address and let people figure, because we
We just gonna put a sign, hey, we're right next
Yeah.
door.
So I can just advertise the address.
right.
Yeah, and if I'm wrong,
It's-
blame
Can I
me.
ask a question? What, is this uncomfortable for everybody?
I love it
Or-
here.
I mean, it's.
You love it here?
It's, they provide us free internet and.
Yeah, I mean, it's, if, I'm not sure if we had a more, Any facility we have, we're still gonna be lugging our gear in and out every time, so that's not really an issue.
The thing that I see is these guys back here behind, it's just, I don't know. It just seems that everybody should be gathered around the same table and not looking at other people's back of their heads.
At least we can hear you and understand.
What do you mean? They're all good looking guys. We're sitting here looking at all these good looking guys. What are you gonna bring that for?
No wonder Marilyn loves it.
I see some good looking women. I don't know about the guys.
Yeah, there's beautiful women in the front and handsome guys in the back.
Okay, so we're a little off,
Okay.
but anyway,
Figure it
so
out.
we will stay here. Yeah, for some reason, there was an email and notice put out that we were over at the golf.
Really?
Yes.
Over the what?
So I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't hear about that.
So-
I will go back and ask about the ballroom as Supervisor Castle requested.
But if we don't want to move,
Well, why?
You tell me,
why-
I will do my due
I mean,
diligence.
we've never been.
The decision just got made. We're gonna stay here, so one less thing to do.
well, we've heard from a number of people that this is not a comfortable place to meet. So, I mean, I don't know if,
What?
yeah.
I love it here.
Yeah.
If you guys go up to the library or off this campus, forget it. I'm not driving that far.
Well, good
I
thing we
mean-
didn't make it a First Nature Ranch then.
What?
Good thing we didn't make it at my ranch.
Well,
Oh, no, that's a little bit different.
Do we
Closer.
have, I know.
This is your horses.
When we first talked to Jones, I guess we only talk about 1 year at a time, but they give us an indication.
Yeah,
of
that's
how-
coming up.
When the sunset for this location is, when they're up.
It's not, they still have a lot of building to do. I can double check with her, but to my knowledge, it wasn't an issue,
I mean,
but. I
yeah.
can definitely-
listening, it doesn't sound like you're building this
Indeed.
model here, but if it's, Harmony West or whatever, it's serving as a model for. That would be the only other concern.
I will ask that as well. I don't know, everybody got wind of the whole thing of somebody did a public records request, requested your audit. They did get it, nothing illegal happened. There's nothing that says the board has to approve an audit before there's nothing like that. However, we like to present it to the board first. So if you have any questions or revisions or something needs to be done, the auditor can do it, and then it's presented, approved, and posted on your website. So your audit is in here. And there was nothing hidden about the audit. There was nothing done inappropriately. She just happened to catch the right person at the right time when she did a records request, and it didn't run through me because it was scheduled to be on your agenda to be approved. March 21st, I was sent the draft. So the draft of your audit for 21 was just done on the 21st of March. So anyway, just wanted to put that out there. Your audit is on there, nothing wrong happened.
What was the thing about 9 months?
I don't know, what's 9 months?
How long it took?
Yeah.
I looked at the date that was the end of our fiscal year and didn't allow for time to select an auditor and have the audit done. And so
There are deadlines to have audits done.
something nefarious was going on and it wasn't.
Yeah, you have to follow those. There's deadlines. And of course, it gets posted like every other one that you've ever had has gotten posted. It will be posted this time. There's nothing covert going on behind closed doors. It just it was the perfect storm with this lady who called and got a records request. So anywho, to tie into what your council said, Infomark is also pulling all the deeds they have, and then we'll compare notes, I'm sure, at some point. So we're pulling all of that. Elizabeth, you've got the go ahead for her to assess. She will do that, and she'll be able to provide ballpark numbers as soon as the accounts get done with your rough budget, which should be by the latest Monday or Tuesday. And she'll be able to provide those numbers. Once she gives me those, I'll send them out to everyone. Let's see, I think that was all.
I'm going to discuss a possible workshop in early
Yes,
May.
I want to
Because
have
this board likes to be more hands-on. with the help.
Yep, I would request if everyone is available in the first week of May, very latest, the second week of May, to do a full budget workshop, only the budget, to go line for line through it, and then you would be able to just move smoothly into your May regular meeting and approve that tentative budget. If we don't do that, then in June, you're gonna have to move your meeting up, because the deadline is June 14th.
Did you have a date in May you were proposing?
Sure.
Yeah, we've had the 26th, I guess in the past, haven't we done the budget workshop immediately before that May meeting?
Yeah, and I don't know if everybody's.
I thought May
available-
was already moving it up to accommodate.
Well, I think in the past we did it before the April meeting, so you didn't run into the May crunch.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing about having this time to sit down and really workshop it is that, one, we have the inflation problem, and we've seen our chlorine go up, our chemicals go up, everything's going up pretty significantly. We need to take that into consideration, as well as some of our projects are coming in really high. I think a time to sit down and really discuss what's going on. Plus, we have our reserve report that we have to consider. So some serious discussion and conversation about that probably be in order.
Maybe it'll just be an evening or
That's up to the board.
morning.
6 a.m.
Saturday. Okay. Hold out on pitchforks.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I was already planning on leaving my job early for that May 26th workshop. If it ends up being later in the day, that's better for me, but I'm already, it's already me leaving work early to be here on a Thursday afternoon, so.
Early for the 6 o'clock meeting?
No, I'm saying it for earlier in the month, I would favor it being later in the day, just based on what everyone else is able.
When you say later in the day, do you mean 4? Do you mean
You
6?
mean an evening meeting? Zoom.
Yeah, that's a workshop, so this could be Zoom, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I still prefer later if possible, but not like.
So-
really go after 7
How soon will the budget be ready?
She told me today they should have it complete tomorrow or early next week. And that was the other thing as well. It wasn't.
May 12th?
I don't know. It's updated. But May 12th, is everybody available May 12th?
Updating.
I'm good May 12th.
I will find out.
Oh,
What about the 13th?
Okay.
Friday,
that a
the
Friday?
13th?
Friday
Whoa.
the 13th, let's not be budget then. The 12th is good.
or Wednesday, May 11th? No, I can't do that. We have right now we have a nature and Am committee meeting.
Right, I'm questionable on the 12th.
You're questionable. What about the 5th, which is a week from tonight? Cinco de Mayo.
Oh, boy.
It's also Yom HaAtzmaut.
Ooh.
What do you call me?
It's Israeli Independence Day.
May 5th works better for me.
May 5th is fine.
May 5th? It's like next
Sorry,
week.
that's a week from today.
You said.
You said early May.
It does put it in tight. I mean, I wouldn't wanna
Presuming they
make
get it
sure-
done.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, is Friday the 6th better then?
Oof, only if we do it in the afternoon.
Friday.
I'm free all those 2 weeks.
No, I have an issue Friday afternoon too, sorry.
But everybody's good for the 12th except for Dan.
Correct. Well, I'm questionable. I might be able to.
Sounds like it's the 12th,
12.
because Dan's gonna make his schedule. Pressure is on Dan.
What time?
6. 6. That's the typical one.
Yeah, it's up to you all. I can do anytime.
Okay.
You know, when you will know whether you're questionable or not.
Should be within the week, yeah.
So is it the 12th? Are we agreeing on the 12th?
Seems that's the one that
What
We've
time?
got to advertise.
Yes, what time?
6.
6 p.m.?
We
All right.
Zoom.
Is that, yeah, that's fine. Yeah. All right, your budget workshop will be May 12th. The other thing that we're gonna get to it next, right? The cost benefit of Garden Road.
Yeah.
So as you saw in there, there's a spreadsheet of what you bring in over 5 years.
Was it the Garden Road or was it the RV fencing and all that?
It's, yeah.
But it's both, because the road goes into the lot, and if you're combining both of those projects, that's your number, and then that's what you bring in over 5 years from the RV lot revenue.
Well, there's a little bit of a question there regarding the numbers. First, the road is not exclusively for use by the RV parking lot. You gotta have a road for the landscaper staging area, you gotta have a road for them to get to the CDD office, you gotta have a road to get to the garden. The road has to exist anyway for the pipeline, so to assign the entire cost of rebuilding the road to the RV parking lot is really stretching the numbers. The other thing along with the numbers is we're looking at current numbers, and that area is gonna be expanded by 5 times.
Right.
Whether you bring in that much business remains to be seen, but
Right. I did totaled up what we would get if everybody who's in there now paid for a year's worth. Then each year it would be, I think it was 26,700 for what's in there now. I looked at a past proposed layout, which was very optimistic. I would never put that many spots in there. But it's possible we could put enough spots in that at our current fees, we could go up to approximately 50,000 a year in income from that lot. If we have the demand. I don't know that we have. Do we have anybody on waiting list now for
For a spot? You actually have open spots, don't you?
It's the road.
I suspect some of that is the road, the fact that it's unfenced, there's no lights, you know, all the stuff we've talked about,
Right,
so.
but, so what we're looking at again is a lot of these expenses and a significant part of the road, you know, I don't know if it's strictly the garden, the landscape, we don't have to bring the road possibly up to fire truck standards.
Yeah, you do, because the office is there.
Well, that begs the other question of possibly relocating the office. I understand that. The decision to put it down there was made rather quickly because we had to move it because we were under the gun.
Where else would it be?
Well, we have a new area of open for a possible small office that might work out in the frontage of Harmony at the end of, what's the name of the road?
Sebastian
Claybrook,
Bridge? Sebastian Bridge?
right off the corner of Sebastian Bridge near the pump station. Right up there where it dead ends into where the apartments are gonna go further down. We now own a piece right up there that could be put to that use.
But there's still the garden, there's still the
We
landscaping.
definitely still need the garden, but again, we could probably, the biggest thing down there that we need a new road for is for the garbage trucks and the huge RVs.
And the landscapers.
And, pardon?
And the boats, huge boats.
Well, yeah, whatever's going into this. So if the storage lot goes away,
But wait a minute, where do you put the landscapers?
and that's what we'd have to talk about as far as the landscapers. Again, I don't know that we're required to provide them with something that will accommodate a semi, right? They just need a place to offload some of the materials.
Storable, right? Oh, yeah. Surveillance, yeah, it is.
Do they pay you rent?
No, it's part of the contract that they have on-site
Storage
security, yeah.
Is that in the RFP, Brett?
I believe the language that, in what we discussed in the RFP, and I can pull up. Keep talking. I don't know
Okay.
the exact language.
But
Right there.
so the question is, do we need to take a pause and reconsider moving forward with taking on such a big project, which requires pretty extensive security, especially now that catalytic converters are such a hot item, and going to require lights and security? Then there will be pressure on us to pave it and improve the actual base. Right now, and we have nobody else waiting, it's for a total of about 42 residents. Is that really something that our entire community should be doing? And are we putting ourselves in competition with the other storage lots in the area? Do we really need to be in that commercial of a business? So that's just something I think we all need to think about. We've worked real hard, we've done engineering for the road and everything, but that road is still on top of 2 major gas pipelines. And we're all a little iffy about that. If we were just doing a one-time crossing, if that other area develops out and we can do a road in on the other direction, do a one-time crossing, then it won't be that much of a problem. But right now, we're going down a large length of that pipeline. So I'm just putting that out there for everybody to consider, since it's such a major capital improvement item. And I don't think any of the board members ever foresaw it being such an expensive undertaking that it requires to come up to all the county codes.
Well, because we didn't think we were gonna have to go jump through all those hoops and require.
Well,
all
remember,
of the-
we didn't build it, it was given, right? And you remember the whole story, right?
Yeah.
And then
So-
it goes poof.
So I wasn't sure that I caught what our occupancy level is there right now.
Our occupancy, we have 48 units used by 42 families.
And so in other words, we're totally occupied.
No.
No.
No,
No.
that was what I was asking. What's our occupancy rate?
What's, for capacity?
We don't know yet. because
No,
it's
no,
never
what's,
been
no,
laid out.
so what, what currently, if we did nothing, I'm asking, are we full up now?
No.
Okay, so it's not as though there's big demand, but there's no waiting list. I mean, it's possible if there was this big upgrade that, you know, with security and lights and blah, 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 that we could have more, but at a considerable cost to the CDD to have more. And it wasn't as though this was a facility that existed initially, that was promised to us, that was part of the marketing. And so I sort of feel like for those people, I understand they want the convenience. People who have commercial vehicles can't or don't want to park by their house. It's a violation of the HOA covenants to park a commercial vehicle by your house. They want something close by. I know that people have been upset because of the lack of security. There's been that vandalism of somebody's RV that was there, for example. You know, the security is really lax, but it's not as though we're offering a commercial storage service, really. We're just offering a convenience to residents, and we have costs involved and we have to cover those costs, so we have to charge them for it. So I'm okay with leaving things as they are for now. And I mean, I know we've spent a lot of money and we've gone through a lot of BS to get to where we are now, and we're very close. Like, we could move forward, but at a pretty big expense. And I'm concerned that we're going to have difficulty recouping that expense. Like at the garden, which is also for only a limited number of residents, because there are a limited number of plots, we require them to spend no more than they take in and to spend all that they take in. But with the RV parking, we are spending a huge amount. Now, we had the fortunateness of the developer to develop that community garden and not the cost to the CDD to develop the garden itself, right? Now we're just maintaining the garden, and that's a cost to us. Yeah, I'm content to let it, we've jumped through a lot of hoops, but maybe for now we just need to let people know, look, we're not a commercial service. If you want that security and that lighting, you need to go to a place that offers that and that you have to pay for that. We are just offering this as a convenience.
But if we offer it as a convenience, the county requires us to bring it up to certain.
So in other words, we can't continue what we've doing.
Right.
Oh, that's a new wrinkle.
I suspect that once the road is fixed and there's a fence around it, and it looks professional rather than just a big open field and it's marked off, that the demand would probably go up. So a crystal ball, no, but when you go look at it, it's wide open. Who wants to drive down the road? I mean, if you're towing a camper or a motorhome or whatever going down that road, it's a rugged trip. It's a rugged trip in a car. So.
Right, but that's why we just brought all of this information to the board so that the board members can look at it closely, recognize that at the most, if we get serious increase in demand, that and don't raise our prices, leave it as it is, that the most we'll probably bring in, if all goes well, would be 50,000 a year. Yet there's a considerable cost to it. So just think about it and think about other options that we have. And again, I've spoken to some of the people that have their units in there and some of the commercial folks, and they have said, gee, it's really convenient, but I understand that this is a huge cost for a few amount. So just everybody think about it, talk to folks out there in the community that may be using the facility or that aren't, and that their fees would be going to subsidize this, and just see what we've got. So that's what we wanted to bring to the board today. So now, anything else in your role?
Yep. Questions for David? Oh, you had a comment?
Yes, I do. So the guard road bids that came in, since they exceeded 195, publicly advertised, or we said everything at this point in ways. First of all, I guess I agree, but the bids he submitted, we can't accept because they exceeded the 195,000. And for all the people who submitted, let them know we're going to publicly advertise, but it's public advertising that we put out.
To the chairwoman's concern before about the fire department and putting in a cheap road, I think we're gonna find that the fire department is gonna demand, if there's any kind of need for services down there, whether it's fire or rescue, whatever, because in our area, it's a fire truck that comes for rescue. They're gonna want the same quality of road, irregardless of whether you've got just a garden or an office or
No,
Cervello or whatever.
the county has already stated that the garden is not an issue and that it was pre-existing, it's pre-approved as open space use.
I'm talking about for fire rescue. That's why we need a heavy road. Because they want to get a fire truck down that road.
Right, but what I'm saying is that if we leave just the storage lot for Cervello and the garden as the only two things down there, we'd need to just grade the existing road and leave it. So that costs.
Yeah, all right. So you're not gonna fix the road, you're just gonna smooth out the holes
Right,
and let it be.
we would grade it but with the reduced traffic that's on it.
Yeah,
then
I
it
understand.
should be
People,
fine.
people go muddy out there.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
you
but
know
if
what?
you fix it, there's no.
Some of the worst offenders have been the landscape guys over the years. I mean, they haul out of there in the morning, they haul in the afternoon, you watch it, they go, but whatever.
So my question for David was, so for the level of work that was being proposed for the Garden Road, what kind of lifetime do we expect before we need to be, whether just rehabbing or replacing? We're looking at, carrying that burden over 5 years of income from rentals, but now, what's your realistic take on how long?
If you decide to move the RV storage area, or if you're gonna abandon this, then we can go to a lesser product load. Because then you're just talking about the trailer and survival.
Well, and fire truck, my understanding is to not have to meet the county's requirements for fire rescue. There could not be any structure back there, so no RV rental,
We have
CPD
to-
office.
Yeah, we have to talk to the county again about that, but I think the last I understood was that the things that are not permitted that are requiring us to upgrade everything, including the roadway, is the RV storage lot, and we were never permitted.
For the
We didn't
CBD
have site
office.
plan or permission to put the office down there. We were okay with the landscape storage area and with the garden.
So for the world, so it didn't quite answer the question. So if we were looking at
If we were
the
gonna
full
keep-
Cadillac package, building the road as we had it bid, expecting we have an RV storage office, everything else down there, what's the lifetime? that you just
Of the road.
Best guess.
10 years. or something.
Okay.
I mean, the thickness of the rock is equivalent to the county's curb standards, which is reach half of asphalt, 6-inch base and 12-inch subbase.
Okay.
So that structural number that the county accepts is equivalent to your 15 inches of rock we're proposing. The only reason we didn't pave it, obviously, was Florida Gas doesn't want to pave it, but it has the same structural integrity of the paved roads within your subdivisions.
Right. Before we could try to, I guess, take advantage of building a lesser road based on, it's discontinuing the storage, we would have to know for sure that we had a good plan for where to locate the office. What kind of timeline and work is needed ahead of that? I mean, I see this area, we mentioned off Claybrick, I mean, one that's, we're talking about, rather than being an area that's kind of off and remote, now we're right next to people's condos and townhomes. Yes, there is some, we own that parcel that kind of extends out into that apartment area. Is that going to?
We'd have to inquire the county. It is properly zoned in the land use for commercial, so it's I don't see, but we'd have to figure out what their design standards would be.
3 holdups for the placement, electric, water, sewer.
They've got pretty much all that right there. That's, and it has a county road frontage.
I understand, but you still gotta,
Yeah.
make the connection, those
Oh,
are the
yeah.
3 biggies.
Right, well, and there's the trailer itself, and then, I mean, we have an area that we store other vehicles, whatever behind there, we have containers, I mean.
Right,
is there even-
what we probably be looking at is a different type of a unit
Yeah.
instead of the long
Yeah, for sure. yeah.
trailer. You put, we don't really need all the space that's in there right now. We have ones off either end that really aren't used. They were used to store historically other pieces
Yeah,
of parts.
That's one of the reasons we rented it was,
Right.
it was gonna be temporary until we figured out
Mhm.
what we're gonna do, right? Well, here we are.
So, and then, and I don't know if we could work something out by giving B1, is that what it's called? Make a swap with the incoming Harmony Code folks, B1 for them constructing a nice little complex right there at the edge. for
That makes
field
perfect sense.
services. Since they'll be out there constructing anyway. But again, all these are what ifs.
So what is, so we need to give David an answer about what we're doing.
If I advertise your bids, and you guys think another couple months to decide, the bids are ready to go, because.
You know, I would hold off on the bids. I mean, we know how big that number is right now. And that's part of what's giving me some hard time. If we could have come down in that number, that might make sense, but that's a huge number for that road that's right on top of that pipeline.
So we're gonna hold off on advertising.
Yeah, I mean,
RFP.
potentially if you go public bid, because we just can't pick 5 contractors unless you submit it, if you go public bid, you may get that competition, but then again, I'm not gonna ask them to hold their bids for 90 days.
Yeah.
If you guys need it, I try to decide.
So the first thing is to say, yes, let's hold off on that, I think, is what we need to do, you know, on getting bids for the Garden Road. And telling folks who did bid already that we need to sort of table this for a couple of months and figure out what we need to do there. Then the second thing is, you know, talk to the county about moving the CDD Field Services Office. And then the other question is to ensure that that we don't need to improve that Garden Road because of either the garden or the landscapers storage facility there. Because if we need to improve the road anyway, because those things are back there, then we need to improve the road anyway, and we won't really have a choice.
Right.
Right, and then,
So
and then we,
investigation.
okay.
And come back next month and discuss a little further.
Language in the RFP?
I'm sorry,
Well, we need to find out if it
Is it
matters.
already in?
The language that was included in the RFP.
Yeah.
You were gonna look it up, so it is in there that we provided.
It was in the old contract, so it probably made it.
Go ahead.
I use the existing language in your old contract, and the old contract stated the district shall not provide a storage building within the boundaries of the district for the contractor as part of the scope of service. The contractor shall, upon receipt of written approval from the district manager, be allowed to temporarily store, if necessary, its materials and equipment on site at a district selected location. The contractor shall be responsible for security of its stored materials and equipment, as well as any connections from utilities to the storage site. Contractor may be allowed to temporarily place a debris dumpster specifically intended for the disposal of debris generated as part of the contractor's daily activities as outlined throughout this agreement, so long as the location of the debris dumpster is approved by the district manager. Contractor shall be solely responsible for the costs associated with said dumpster debris.
So
So
we're
that's-
not locked in the.
Right, but that's potentially going to affect the bids if we have to, I mean, we have to change the RFP to say we're not offering that.
It already
It already
says-
No,
No,
it says we don't provide a
building.
building. We do provide temporary space
Well, it
and a place
doesn't
for a
guarantee it,
dumpster.
it says we may.
Right,
It
well,
says, no, it says the contractor shall, upon receipt of written approval from the district manager, be allowed to temporarily store if necessary.
okay, so when they're
So
bidding,
they would
they're-
have to ask.
okay, and we would have.
It's
every right
always
to say
been
we
a
don't.
question at every contract, do we have the ability to store here because it will affect our pricing?
Right. If
Because
they have
the
to haul
vehicles have
everything
to
out
be
every single
drilling,
day, right?
exactly right. And it was a substantial amount of money for hauling in and out every day.
Sure.
And that's why we got to where we're at with that thing.
So we will inquire.
If I'm not mistaken, looking at the garden or the RV lot compound, that encompassed the landscape storage facility when you look at plants.
They were adjacent.
The fence, there was no split, the fence went around it and that lot was open.
The new fence is gonna go right, it's gonna come out further and will go to the post of the gate of the landscape compound. The fence is gonna be together. But they will have a separate access into their compound.
we'll need to check on the county as far as the possibility of relocating field services to that parcel.
And also whether we need to improve the road because of the landscape, because of the garden and the landscape storage facility.
So
Separately.
county, possible moving field to the end of U2,
Right?
right? And then also if we have to provide a road.
Well, I would say that's a separate question. We need to know if
Right.
it's just the garden,
If
do we
it's
need
just
to?
the
Yeah.
garden.
It's totally separate. We have to provide the road if we have the garden.
Well,
back
the
there.
garden, but then with the garden and the storage area, because if the storage area on its own doesn't incur any additional cost for the road
Road.
upgrade, we should definitely do it because that benefits the
The landscaper.
right. So we need to ask for each piece separately.
Yeah. Now, hopefully the garden road will be getting improved soon. We need to double check with J.R. Davis because they are obligated under our agreement to grade that road.
Junior Davis.
That might be the fix we need. If they're gonna grade it,
Thank you.
grade it, roll it, compact it.
You gotta
roll it
stop
on the
playing
line.
with it.
What about the drainage on it?
All right.
Well, if they grade it, they can put a slight slope to it, because they'll do that with a motor grader, and they just angle the blade and just put a 2-degree slope, and then whatever way you want it to go, and the water will run off.
Okay.
Won't be
Yeah.
perfect, but
But in part of it, the water, if you grade it this way, it's gonna flood the shed, and if you grade it this way, it's gonna flood the garden.
We'll work on
Okay, thank you.
it. Okay.
we got some pumps.
Okay, so at this point, any other questions about that you need answered so that we can consider what our future going forward with that area is?
You want to proceed forward the road name, so that doesn't become a time issue later if you decide to.
Let's just do the road name.
Yeah, do the road name.
Motion made, move along.
All right. Now we're on new business. Our audit.
Move to accept.
I have a motion to accept. Do I hear a
Seconded.
I hear a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
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 Right?
Okay, lights for the garden, $65. You have that in the budget, I understand, or no?
No,
I thought you just said you had $40 and you just gave her 30, so that.
I thought we could
well, we
finance
need
that.
20 rolls of plastic to cover the beds. And I can buy them at Walmart for $10 a piece.
Talk to me, I will get you lights for the garden. Moving on, discussion of repurposing developer signs.
Table? Or-
Okay, we will
I
table
don't have
that
anything
till
prepared. to-
next meeting, and I need to prepare some, I've got some. ideas.
Move to table item D.
All right. Motion second. Okay.
Do you need to move the
B1 and
table? or-
U2?
And possible uses of U1 and U2. And that would be U1 and U2. So we discussed the possibility.
I'm on a different agenda.
This was added on when they
Okay.
amended it to take the first item off. Any other ideas about B1 and U2? The other.
You can trade that off for a building for field services, that's a good deal.
Good deal.
Yeah,
Well,
why not?
so I seem to recall that the attorney for the prospective purchaser of that area said, well, we can do what we want. You can't stop us. We have an
That's-
easement.
And again, that's their interpretation. I'd like to have our own, but I would not bank on that. And again, if we're already using it for other purposes, they have no intent of using that corner up there. So,
Probably for parking.
Pretty far out.
no, that's our property and.
You're talking the corner where the electric,
Right.
it comes around, there's electric box there or something? Pond is right there too, right?
So anyway, so if the board is okay with this, I have a contact and can talk to them briefly about it. There's no objection. So.
Briefly about moving field services there, that's what you're saying.
Yeah, and hopefully get them to build a building in exchange for some of that land that we own. That would be a good trade.
I mean, they would like that be one to not be owned by us. And so they can incorporate it into development plans. Because there's always the possibility of a holdup if there's any argument over what their plan is.
Sure.
Or estimated use of that. So it's strictly up to the board. If someone else has an idea of how they would like to use B1, that would.
It's been sitting there idle for the better part of 20 years, right?
And again, it was supposed to be on the plans. It was a road. It's been improved. It's got a good base on it. It could be used for farmers markets. It could be used for, I don't know, we could.
Once they put their buildings up, it becomes less and less valuable to us. It
Right.
has a value to them and less to us, but there's a value to us at the end over there where we want a building, right? A little bit of horse trading, that's how these things get done. It's a win-win.
You know, but again, do you want me to approach them on that, or let's
saying-
find out first from the
Yeah,
county?
we
I'm
have
saying
some
yes.
questions we want answered first
Mhm.
on, that kind of sets the stage for, there's more that needs to be defined before we
Sure.
make a smart answer on that.
Okay, anybody else have ideas of any uses that we did go ahead as instructed last meeting, field services, put up the tow signs. So hopefully we won't have any more semis and other miscellaneous items parking in those areas. So that will be cleaned up and looking better. But if there are any other use ideas, we can discuss next meeting. All righty, we did the assessments already. And that's it. Quickly, I'll just mention that Harmony West also approved the continuation of the maintenance. They are going to do maintenance on the lake again tomorrow. So they'll be working on that maintenance. They are providing us with a little summary that's pretty sketchy. Is anybody going out on the lake to observe whether the?
I haven't recently, but I would be happy to do so.
Yeah, the boats will be closed tomorrow because they're treating the lake. But we are getting notification of the treatment dates and everything. And next meeting, I will bring back to you a reconsideration of that general coordination cost share, because there has been a proposal floated on dealing with that. If there's no further business,
I
any
have,
supervisors' requests?
Yes, a quick question for InfoMark. Just I've heard from people seen posted that, some people have been using the maintenance email and whether they're just, saying for attention or having issues or whatever, saying that they don't feel they're having things, could we on the board get visibility on what requests are coming in?
CDD maintenance at Infomark.
It's an Infomark email address that copies our field manager, Angel on it.
Copies a bunch of people. And
Well, what Dan's asking for is, can we look at that email, what's coming in?
To see if.
So we used to, when, a while back, when Gerhard was working with us, we wanted to make sure that things were, when things were reported, that got recorded and that those things got addressed. And so he used to submit a list in the agenda that had, like resident reported complaints
Right.
and issues.
And I'm not asking for any of that to change. I'm just curious if we could have visibility on them.
I think what Dan
What
is
does that
saying, and
mean?
I've seen it too, some people are either really happy at the response they get, like overjoyed, and other people say, I sent in multiple requests over 6 weeks and they haven't said anything to me. That's, seems to be the standard. Now, somewhere in the middle is the truth. But there's a wide
Yeah.
disparity in what people are reporting.
Well, as we saw last month, one of the people who was reporting disappointment had been writing to Gerhard, right?
Right.
And he was
Sure.
gone and
And
blah,
there's
blah,
a
blah, you
lot
know.
of people that are still doing
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I just deactivated, because his emails were coming into my inbox, and I just recently sent it to IT saying, I don't need to, because I was getting a lot of just spam mail, like the vote requests and stuff like that, but. We had an email come in last night, Dan, you sent one late last
Yeah.
night, I responded first thing this morning.
Right, no, I,
We're taking those and sending them directly to vendors, or responding, a lot of them are card requests.
Yeah.
And they'll ask
That's
like,
the
how do we
whole
get it, and we'll then sending them back, I mean, in terms of. I guess what I'm trying to understand, how do you want us to include you on it, other than just we create a tracker, or?
not even just,
What are you looking for?
Card request issue, or is there something else? Because there
Was an issue.
was an issue with cards. They ran out of the card material and then they ordered it, the wrong thing came in and it was a snafu, and that's all been smoothed out.
that might have been part of it. I know I have a neighbor that I guess put in something about just growth in the pond in his neighborhood, just like algae. I'm not sure if that is.
Yeah, sent responses that were treated, I don't know one that hasn't been responded to,
Yeah,
honestly.
I honestly can't see one that hasn't been responded to, and if somebody can forward it to me. happy to
Now,
look into it.
was he not, so sometimes then, and I'm not saying this is the instance with your neighbor, but. We can go out and treat, it doesn't necessarily go away right
Of
away,
course, of
right?
course,
So-
yeah. Again, I'm not, this isn't saying you guys aren't doing your job, I'm just curious, is there without adding a lot of, work for anyone, is there a way to have visibility on that?
And what is visibility?
So
mean?
he's, yeah,
An Infomark email, and I don't know that we could add an outside source to it. Happy to ask IT.
I think probably we can keep, the forum, people tend to complain. Sure. Maybe people complain with you or I, because we seem to be seeing it, right? Just ask the question, well, what happened? Who'd you send it to? Maybe that's what, and maybe they're still sending it to Severn Trent Services. I mean, people.
Well, Gerhard, just keep in mind, Gerhard is using Harmony CDD as his personal email address, and he had that listed everywhere, and a lot of emails still go to that, and that is active.
Sure.
That is his personal email
It
address.
doesn't bounce back.
Right, and it should be scrubbed from the website. And quick other note, you're gonna get me the full text of resolutions that we have approved tonight and then prior in the year.
Yep, she is pulling all of those. I don't, if you want them all from inception on there, that's a lot.
No, we've only got the 7 years and everything's through last year fine. It's just the ones that for 22.
From 21 to 22.
The 21's on there. It's just
Oh, There's only
22.
3 from 22.
Right.
So I'll send those over.
That's it.
I had something and I forgot it, what it was. It's past my bedtime.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn, all in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, good night.
Thanks for staying, guys. Thanks for coming. Thanks for staying.
Somebody. So this is
Yeah.
understand.
I'll be writing letters.
Yeah. The battery run out.
So with the roll proposal,
There were some bids that high. It's being over, I guess, two some threshold, then it has to. There might be some, but more importantly, getting rid of it. Figure out if we change the scope of what's back there, it may not be.
I'm just telling you from people I've talked to myself, from the owner's perspective. I know that road's important, however,
Let me get to the bottom.
when you look at the number of people it benefits and the dollar amount,
Oh, sure.
that's a lot.
Definitely.
Where there's some people that might want that money for a community or something else that benefits more people. So I hope the board looks at that and looks at other avenues that can save money instead of putting it on. So I mean, that's my two
Very,
cents.
very aware of that.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you guys.
All right.